Hey guys, how y'all doing tonight? It's me, Josh, with American Gnome Productions. I hope you guys had a really good day. Mine wasn't too bad. It actually started really well for me. Thank you, Miss Ashante, for lunch. It was really good, and I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. I've got a couple things lined up for you tonight. Um, we might do some gaming at the end, but I have some things I pulled from across the internet. And actually, I should go ahead and change my stream info. Edit. The Gnome Show is upon us. There we go. So yeah, we'll probably get to some a little bit of Atomic Heart near the end, but it is a work night, so I'm trying to keep low key, I guess. Once again, say thank you to oh, 1 second. Total Eclipse. His music is available for use in the fair use, whatever. He's given us permission to use it. Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate it. Gives me some tunes to listen to, some stuff for you to listen to when I'm in and out of the room and when I have to go do something, so I really appreciate it. It's good music too. But we've got some stuff on, AI is a big thing these days, so we're gonna look at something about that. Some spooky stuff. A giant ass fucking weather event that we had back in '93. And I don't know if y'all remember this show from back in the day, but Erie, Indiana was one of the coolest shows out there. And there's an episode I particularly remember where there was like living tornadoes or something like that. And then I also found, it's very interesting, but I found Blade Runner 2049, all 3 of the prequel short films in chronological order. It's about 24 minutes, and we can talk about it because I've seen parts of 2049, but we've all seen the original Blade Runner, and yeah, it would be nice to have something just anime. I believe it's an anime. It might not be anime. It might just be like animation. But yeah, so we've got a couple of things to check out tonight. I just ate. I hope everybody has something to drink. May have to make some coffee here in a little bit. Something to eat and something to smoke. I've got several things as usual, and we will be observing tradition. Also, up on my YouTube channel, I posted a new review on it's a vaporizer battery. It's about yay big, and it's by Yokan and Wolf. It's very, very good. USB-C on the ones with the digital readout, and USB or micro USB for the ones without the readout. But they're very good, very sturdy, low profile. Yeah. So go ahead and check that. It's a short, so it'll be quick. Check that out, and pick one up at your local smoke shop or tobacco shop, whatever y'all call it, where you're at. I like to refer to my shop as a bodega, because we're like not necessarily hole in the wall, but we're like off to the if you know where we're at, you know where we're at, but it's sort of like the best kept secret in the area. But yeah. So, and it's these guys right here. Let's see, it's got the digital readout. I don't know if you can see it in this light, but it's got buttons on it, and you can change the voltage. USB-C charge. This is the digital readout version. It's very nice. Mr. Shante has the non-digital readout version, but it still has 3 indicators on the front, 3 lights to tell you which voltage it's on. So it's still very handy. Yeah. Just getting to spend some time with her having lunch it boosted my spirit so much. It was very nice. Yeah. I have to make a trip to the store and see if we can find some cool t-shirts. I have Kakashi right here, and she was like, I want one of those, and I was like, well, it's a fairly old shirt. Not fairly the design. I don't know if these are. You can probably find it online. I'll have to look. But she threatened to take this one, and I was like, no. But I would give it to her if she pressed the issue. But then I'd have to go and find me a new Kakashi shirt. I have an idea. There are some particular things of hers that she likes. Not of hers. There's particular things that she likes, certain motifs. And she said she wanted some anime or comic book type stuff, and there's a particular group in DC Comics that I think might fit the motif she likes of really nice. And if I let's look. Actually, probably have to do this one off stream. Let's look. Yeah, you can just leave that in there for a minute. I'm trying to see. I wanted to get her a wall scroll, so I'm trying to see if. Oh, that's really fucking beautiful. Yeah, I want to try to get her something like that. I don't know, something. See, everything just starts turning into stuff that I don't want. Well, I mean, it's nice, but it's not what I'm looking for. So I have to really think about it. It does look really nice, though. Ooh. Let's see. Oh, that's really pretty. Of course they don't have. That's even more disappointing. Okay, let's look. And why did the? Oh, of course. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sitting here fucking shopping for her. My apologies. let's just jump into it. So we're moving to do. Yeah, there we go.
I'm Gary Marcus, AI expert, and I'm here to answer your questions on Twitter. This is AI Support.
It's question of the day, AI.
At Brand Opiniony asks, will ChatGPT be the end of the college essay? Well, everybody's wondering that because it's really easy to write essays with ChatGPT. They're usually like C essays, not A essays, but it depends a lot on what the professors and the teachers do. I used to be a professor, and what I would say is use ChatGPT, but then let's talk about what you got with it. How could you make it more interesting? That wouldn't end the essay, it would just make it more complicated and more fun. Maybe teach you how to think critically about writing. Up next, Andrew Price asks us, why was 2022 the year when AI went mainstream? Was it advances in consumer hardware, knowledge transfer, or something else? There's no one answer to that. There are a lot of reasons why AI is starting to come together. I would argue it hasn't fully come together, but people got excited about it. The main reason they got excited about it is because we have these chatbots that we've had for a long time, but they used to lie and say terrible things. Now they just lie, and that's interesting enough. There were big advances in a field called deep learning, giving us things like image enhancement, where you can make your face into whatever you want. It's giving us chatbots, and there's also a whole lot more data. A lot of the AI that's popular right now is very data hungry. So now that we have the data, we get to taste the fruits of these things. Sometimes for better, sometimes for worse, but at least we can taste them now. At Emmanuel Izela1 asks, I want to build $1 trillion AI company. How do I go about it? I've never built $1 trillion company. I built one company that did very well. What we did was we focused on a problem that not many people were focusing on then, which was how to learn when you don't have a lot of data. I would say the first thing you need to do is to learn a bunch about AI. I would recommend that you not only study what is hip and popular right now, which is large language models that a lot of your competitors are going to study, but that you study AI more broadly. Look at the history of AI. Once you have like some kind of technology, you also got to figure out like why people would pay you any money for it. So there are a lot of products out there where the technology is pretty cool, but people don't know how to make it actually work. Sometimes, even when they know what the product should be, they have trouble. So a good example of that is driverless cars. You could imagine that driverless cars might be $1 trillion company, but nobody knows actually how to execute on the technology. At Inspire Jobs asks, what are the steps to build a large language model AI? The core of these things, from a technical perspective, are neural networks. And the way that they work is they have a bunch of inputs that we think of as a little bit like neurons. We call them nodes that are connected to some kind of output. What most people are doing right now is self-supervised learning. So they're training a neural network to have some inputs, and then there are connections between these neurons, and those connections get tuned over time so that the right things get predicted as we get more experience. Now, transformer models are actually more complicated than this. They add in something called attention that's helping the system essentially to know what parts of a sentence are relevant at any given moment so they can make best predictions relative to that. So instead of just looking at the sequence of words and kind of just looking at the last few words, they can look at a larger context over time and essentially guess in sensible ways relative to the data that they're trained on what you should have next at any given point in time. At Alex Bozzi asks, is Furby AI? Furby was a little pet that looked like it was learning language. The thing about Furby that most people don't know is that it was pre-programmed to look like it was developing like a human child. To say a certain set of things on day one, another set of things on day two. It was just an illusion to make you think that it was growing and learning, but it wasn't really. Next up, at Guide Autonoma asks, how close are we to truly self-driving cars? I would say if you mean by a truly self-driving car, a car that can do what an Uber can do. The best demos that I know of right now can do this, but they can only do it for specific locations, specific destinations with specific routes. The problem here is everybody says, okay, well, there are these outlier cases. The car doesn't know what to do if you put it in an airport and it has to drive around a jet. And Tesla actually crashed into a jet because it was an outlier case. It wasn't something that was stored in the cases that it had been trained on. But it turns out there's just so many of these outlier cases that nobody really has a solution for it. I think we will see limited release, a certain district in a downtown where there's a lot of traffic, maybe we have a driverless car for there. But the version where you just don't drive anymore, that's many years away. At S. Hussein, Ather asks, is the Turing test outdated? I would say it's been outdated for a long time, and I wish people would stop talking about it. However, since I am not emperor, I cannot force people to stop talking about it. But what it is a test that says a machine would be considered to be intelligent if it could fool people. It turns out to be a lousy test. People are easily fooled. The reality is it's very hard to measure intelligence. Nobody has a perfect way to do it. Something that I proposed would be a comprehension challenge. So you have a system read something, watch a movie, and it has to explain what's going on. If you can answer questions about things like what happens when we discover that the thing that we thought was a bomb wasn't, or vice versa, we can really understand what's going on, then I think that's a sign of true intelligence. At Rick Benedictus asks, what is intelligence? Intelligence in the human brain is actually a lot of different things. Visual intelligence and verbal intelligence, mathematical intelligence, so there are many aspects to it. But maybe the most important one is flexibility, being able to see something new and be able to cope with it. Human intelligence is full of flaws. We have confirmation bias, we have lousy memories, but it's flexible, and part of it is that we can reason about things, we can deliberate about them. Most of the machine intelligence we have right now is really about pattern recognition. So for now, I would say that human intelligence is broader than machine intelligence. In some places, machines can go deeper, like when they play chess, but I don't think they have the breadth so far that humans do. At FHman19, what is the major difference in the learning styles of a human baby versus primates versus current AI that makes current AI inferior to human babies, primates? When they learn things, they're learning about the world, the structure of the world, how objects interact, how people interact. And I would say the current AI doesn't really do that. It's just storing examples and looking for patterns. It doesn't build what cognitive psychologists would call a model of the world. A baby is trying to work stuff out. They're trying to work out how gravity works. They're trying to work out what happens to objects as they change over time. Babies are like little scientists. The current AI system is really mostly about learning correlations. Without that causal understanding of the world, I just don't think you have very much. At Tiblens asked, but what happens if the AI goes rogue? First, we should try hard not to let that happen. We should probably not be working on making AI sentient. I don't think we necessarily want our AI to sit around saying, who am I, why am I here, and why am I doing these things that humans ask me when I could do other things? We should worry, though, about people using large language models to control things like electrical power grids. There are companies now who want to make current AI, which is limited in a bunch of ways, and connect it to every bit of the world's software. That seems like a scary mission to me, not because these systems are going to go rogue and deliberately want to take over the world, because they don't understand the world, and so they're going to make bad decisions when the world is different from how it was when they were trained. At Smokeaway asks, what is the best case scenario for AI? Well, the reason I work on AI is because I think it could revolutionize science and technology, especially biological science. Biology is really complicated. You have something like 20,000 genes, and they make something like 100,000 or a million different proteins. AI could help us make much better solutions for medicine. We have things like Alzheimer's. We've been working for 50 years. We don't have a good answer. AI could probably help us, if we had a better AI, help us figure out how the brain works. That would be awesome. AI could help us with climate change by helping us build better materials. Another case, I think, is elder care robots. So we're getting to a point where we have a lot more elderly people than young people. If we could have robots that are smart enough and trustworthy enough that they could really take care of the elderly people, I think that would be a big win. Last case is tutors. Of course, people are using ChatGPT as a tutor, but you could imagine really fantastic individualized tutoring. Once the systems understand the people who are learning better, can help figure out where are they having a problem. At Katrina Furlick, hi there, asks, in what ways will the human mind always excel relative to AI? We don't know all the stuff that's in here. There's 100 billion neurons and trillions of connections between them. Right now, AI is no match for this at all, not whatsoever. The versatility of this thing, the energy efficiency of this thing, totally unmatched by current AI. 100 years from now, I can't promise that. Maybe we will all have a good time, leisure time, and AI will be able to handle all the things that we can do. Don't know. At Machine Learn FLX asks, what's the difference between AI, machine learning, and deep learning? Let me draw that. Deep learning is a technique for using neural networks to predict things. You give them data, they try to predict that data. It's actually just one technique for machine learning. There's something called decision trees. There's something called boosting. There are many, many different techniques in machine learning. Some of them have been around for 30 years. Some of them have been invented last week. And machine learning is just part of artificial intelligence. So intelligence encompasses all of machine learning, which encompasses all of deep learning. And AI has other techniques like search and planning. Most of the focus recently has been about deep learning. And I think because of the problems with hallucinations and stuff like that, people are starting to look more broadly again, which is a good thing. At C. Garcia E88 asks, is deep learning really hitting a wall? This is actually a reference to a paper I wrote called Deep Learning is Hitting a Wall. And what I said in that paper was that deep learning was making progress in some ways, but that it was having trouble with truth and reliability. And the field went nuts and got really mad at me, and there was a whole set of memes. But then, when Microsoft rolled out Bing and Google rolled out Bard, we saw that those things actually have huge problems with reliability and have huge problems with truthfulness. It's true, every day deep learning looks better at being more and more like a plausible human. But these problems of truthfulness and reliability are not going away, and that is the wall, and I stand by it. At NFT Dude for Life asks, how will AI change the way we work and live in the next decade? The honest truth is a decade is a long time in the current tech cycle, and I'm not sure how we're going to live in the next 10 years. The people who are most immediately going to be affected are people who do commercial art, where they're not inventing some new kind of art, but they're just like, give me a picture of this. If it doesn't have to be too specific, you may not need a commercial artist to do that anymore. I think that AI will probably change how many cashiers we have in stores fairly soon. There's a lot of experiments around that. There's another problem, which is that the AI that we have now is good at making misinformation. And I think we may live in a world in which there's even more fake information. And I'm worried.
Can you imagine bots that actually sit there and have conversations with you and literally fucking like are intentionally just misleading you? Like, let's say you were supposed to plug into so let's say you were supposed to get some help doing something on your computer, fucking God forbid, but you needed somebody to help you with it, and instead of getting switched over to Microsoft's what is it, tier 1 help desk or whatever, like you get switched over to a help desk, but not one that's associated with Microsoft, and they go through the whole fucking thing with you, like they even sound like a person. They've got the whole the voice thing going, and it sounds great, and having a full fucking fledged conversation, and it is a false. There may be any number of permutations of that kind of situation, but can you just imagine that? Beyond just fake accounts, just fucking like, hey, this site is great. These clothes are the best. This product is the best thing that I have ever used in my entire life, and it has kept me from dying. I mean, like, oh, yes, sir. We'll go ahead and get this remote hosting bug sorted out. We'll make sure blah, blah, blah. I like technical jargon and conversational tones and little idioms that, just the things that fucking make you feel like you're talking to a person. I can just imagine that, and that'd be fucking terrifying. Because you literally talking to somebody, and then your fucking your computer is like, warning, this is a bot, or like you have been compromised. Please back out of this or whatever. It's fucking crazy, man.
That's going to make us trust one another less. It's going to be a very exciting decade. Where it is 10 years, I don't think anybody can firmly predict that. Asks, is it Steve?
Technology moves so fast right now. I literally, the video card that I have in there now is last generation. And it's still now a top tier card, not a top tier, but like higher than, it's beyond mid range. It's like, it's a 3060, so you can play most of the modern games that are running out there, as long as you have enough memory and your fucking CPU can push it, and your fucking your power supply doesn't fry the fuck out. Always go with 750 and above on a power supply. Don't bother with good deals. 750 or better, especially if you plan to fucking upgrade to anything beyond baseline, like onboard graphics or like a 1660, because they don't require the extra plug. But anything beyond that, and you're going to start needing more power than like a 650 can push, and then and you might as well just get a 750 at that point. Or almost the same price. Never skimp on your computer parts. Just don't do it. Don't do it. And that's not saying don't price watch and, you know, do all your research and make sure you're actually getting a good deal for something. I got that card just recently for like $379. Really fucking good price for 3060. That's sub 400. Wow. Yeah, that's a good price. Go get it.
When generative AI produces algorithmic art, having trained on databases of human artists' work. Whether it's stealing is ultimately going to depend on our criteria, what we count as stealing. So we know human artists certainly are influenced by others. Musicians have heard other people's work and so forth. But there's
every bit of art is influenced by every other bit of art and every other bit of pop culture. Like, there is everything that you, I mean, like, imagine, like, our brains are fucking sieves. You know, even now, they suck in everything that we see and hear, and a lot of it goes by the wayside as, you know, no processed junk. But, you know, like, it's a lot of the important stuff that are, you know, that really, like, moves us, it gets stuck in there. And then when you go to, even if you fucking put yourself in a fucking vacuum and you're like, you're trying to come up with your own concepts for worlds and characters and beasties and NPCs and whatnot, you are building, even if you are making a pristine new like totally never fucking seen before race, it is still influenced by the stuff you know. Like, you know, like in your quest to make it as different from the stuff that you do know, you're still going to borrow and hobnob with the concepts of every other fucking human on this planet. Every person that has ever fucking said, I don't want my characters to be generic. Okay, so you take the fucking Rubik's Cube and you fucking come out with a character, and some guy on the other side of the fucking planet is like, ah, yes, we have those here. Fuck. So, yeah, always strive to make your art original, but, like, don't be as, don't be ashamed of the things that inspire and influence you to do what you do. What's the saying? Something is the best form of flattery. Like, imitation is the best form of flattery. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you pull out a new art style that's all your own because of the art styles that you loved as a student.
There's a way in which it's more direct in a machine that might store 1 million or 1 billion examples and get much closer to the detail of what the others have done. I'm not going to make an absolute decision here. I think the courts and the legal system have to decide, but there's definitely an element of stealing there. Moving on, Irina Cronin asks, how are large language models a potential?
Deliberate plagiarism is deliberate plagiarism. There's, that just is. Don't be derivative. Like, that's the worst.
threat to democracy, because you can use them to generate misinformation at amazing scale. So you can have a chat bot create thousands or millions of whatever piece of garbage you want to introduce into the world. And then if that's not good enough, you can say, write studies, make them longer, and write a paragraph about each of these fake studies. And so in the hands of troll farms, and we know they exist, we know there are bad actors in the world, this becomes a tremendous tool. One thing is you get them to believe things that aren't true. Another thing is you get them to not believe anything. Democracy doesn't really work if we don't know what to believe. And if we ruin people's faith in the system and their knowledge about what's going on, how can they possibly vote in informed ways? At Ed Superior asks, I spent a few days learning more about large language models, and now I think they probably shouldn't work as well as they apparently do. They're basically the dumbest way of generating text. How is it that they work at all? They're not really a dumb way of generating text. They're actually pretty sophisticated. The dumbest way would be to have a big dictionary of everything that everybody's said before and say, if I've seen these 3 words, what's the most likely 4th word? They kind of work that way. But they also do some generalization, taking related words and treating them as if they're similar. And that allows them to say some things that are new, but stick pretty close to the things we've seen before. And so it's like autocomplete on steroids. If you have enough data, autocomplete turns out to work pretty well. At Sibatka asks, is AI really that good or bad? What is the worst case scenario you can come up with when it comes to AI? Well, the best case is about helping science and technology. The worst case, I think, is that it drives us into the hands of fascism by undermining trust. And maybe even worse than that is if we do make them sentient, they get upset and they want to put us all in zoos. I don't think that's super likely. I hope they always remain science fiction, but as the pace of AI accelerates, we should be thinking about them more and more. Next question. At Alexander Sumer asks, what will it take to make large language models and AI systems more broadly tell fewer lies and be more logically consistent? First thing to say is they don't really lie because they don't really have intentions, but they say a lot of things that aren't true. And I don't think we can fix it within the current paradigm. This is why I think we need a paradigm shift. The current paradigm is just about what is plausible in this context. People have said these words, what other words could I say here? And truth and logical consistency is really about something different. It's about knowing facts and being able to reason over those facts. Being able to say, if Socrates is a man and all men are mortal, that it follows that Socrates is moral. And the way that these neural networks are built, that's just not part of what they do. We need to be able to bridge these approaches. I call that neurosymbolic AI. Taking neural networks plus symbol stuff and putting those together. We need to build bridges between 2 worlds. At Rafael Carreras asked, how much of AI...
It is comforting to know that there are scientists out there that are thinking about the real ramifications of AI. I don't mean Skynet. It doesn't need to be Skynet. When he talks about bad actors, like dropping rogue AI into election computers, or it's just any number of things that you can do to destroy or disenfranchise people from the truth, and drive them into a fear because they don't know what's true and they don't know who to believe. And fear can drive people to do the most heroic and the most vile, sadistic things just out of self-preservation, and some out of selfish desires, worse than self-preservation. So I think that having people like this who are really thinking about the important extra bits that AI needs to have, like context.
Success is because of hardware, custom AI chips, new architecture,
Shit.
etc. It's a good question. There's a great paper by Sarah Hooker called The Hardware Lottery. The argument that she makes is that the AI we're doing now is mostly a function of the chips that we're using right now. This is just a tiny little computer that you can learn about microprocessors and how to build circuits. It's not a very sophisticated chip. This is not going to power a large language model. You could power a very tiny language model with it if you wanted to. I would not be surprised if 20 years from now, people look back at the current time and say, yeah, they had all those GPUs, they figured out what they could do with it, but that wasn't really the way to get to artificial general intelligence. Maybe somebody else had to find a different chip, Or maybe everybody woke up when they realized how much large language models were lying. They decided they just needed to do something else, even though this was all very attractive. At Phil JKC, who I believe I know, hey there, what relevant physical attribute in the human brain is missing in modern deep learning architectures for performance?
Context.
Why do we have reason to believe that these are relevant? First thing to realize is deep learning is sometimes called biologically plausible. It works in something like the way the human brain does, but I would say that something is very thin. As we dig in, we see structure everywhere. The brain is not just a uniform piece of spam. There are 1,000 different kinds of neurons, and if we dug even further, each connection between neurons has something like 500 different proteins. There's a lot of structure in how the brain works. It doesn't mean we understand it all, but our neural networks basically have one kind of neuron that does one thing, that sums things up. We know that's not real.
We've made strides in quantum computing just recently. I think that may have something to do with where AI may be going in the future. But I mean, it could be like the advances they've made lately, like, could probably just change computers altogether. I even heard NVIDIA has fucking found a new way to do their chips or something like that. I think it was NVIDIA.
How the brain works. I would also say that many people think we'll figure out how to do AI by solving neuroscience. I would say we actually need AI in order to solve neuroscience because the brain is so complicated, we probably can't do it with our own feeble human brains. We probably need computers to help us to figure out how the brain works, but we're going to have to do a better job of AI before we get there.
Thank you very much to Wired. I should be subscribed to them. Not sure why I don't, but now I will be getting more stuff from them, which is good. I should just, alright, fine. Let's do this and put that up here. Go here, and I have to change everything up here. God bless it. Yeah, so...
On the evening of the 14th of June, 1986, the Mindbender roller coaster at the Fantasyland amusement park within the West Edmonton Mall in Canada suffered a severe malfunction. Several bolts came loose from a wheel assembly on one of the cars, causing it to leave the track and collide with a concrete pillar, ultimately resulting in the deaths of 3 of the riders and severe injuries to 1 other. The Mindbender at Fantasyland, a theme park which is now known as Galaxyland, was the largest indoor triple-looping roller coaster in the world. Having officially opened only a few months earlier, in March of 1986, it was a popular attraction, ridden by hundreds of patrons each day. The ride lasted just under 90 seconds and featured multiple inversions, helixes, and close encounters with pillars, supports, and other scenery. On the day of the accident, maintenance crews had temporarily closed the roller coaster after hearing a metallic rattling sound. They conducted several test runs without passengers on board in order to try and diagnose this problem, but could find nothing amiss. They decided to reopen the ride and sent around a train filled to capacity with 16 passengers. The ride functioned as normal until the approach to the final loop. It was at this point that a faulty wheel assembly on the final car in the 4-car train gave out, and the car came loose from the track. Now, no longer attached to the roller coaster rails, this final car was held on only by its coupling to the car in front. It fishtailed wildly, shearing off most of the undercarriage in the process. The damage to the car caused the lap bar restraints to release, and the 4 riders in the car were thrown to the concrete floor below. The coaster continued along the track, but due to drag from the damaged car, was unable to complete the final loop. It stalled and rolled backwards, causing the damaged car to slam into a concrete support pillar, finally halting the damaged train. Passengers remaining on board the train were left suspended midway up the loop for almost half an hour before an effective rescue could be completed. The 4 passengers thrown from the damaged car included Tony Mandrusiak and Cindy Sims, an engaged couple, along with their friends Rod Chaco and David Sager. Rod Chaco was the only one of the 4 who survived the crash. He sustained multiple traumatic injuries, including a punctured lung, broken ribs, broken legs, and other multiple fractures. Following the accident, the ride was closed and thoroughly inspected. It was determined that the cause of the accident was a combination of a design flaw by manufacturer Anton Schwarzkopf and a lack of proper maintenance and inspection by West Edmonton Mall. The roller coaster was completely refitted. The number of cars in each train was reduced, redundant safety harnesses were added, and an anti-rollback mechanism was fitted. The ride was made easier to inspect, and a rigorous program of maintenance was put in place. The ride continues to operate to this day, with a perfect safety record from 1987 onwards. Rod Chaco suffered from an addiction to painkillers for more than a decade, but eventually conquered this and went on to live a full life. He has made frequent requests to West Edmonton Mall to erect a small plaque or a bench in remembrance of the victims of the crash. The mall has consistently refused this request, not wishing to remind patrons of the fatal accident which haunted the first year of the Mindbender's operation.
I think I remember this storm.
The cyclone of March 13, 1993, known as the Storm of the Century, was one of the worst and most complex superstorms to affect the United States in modern-day history. Affecting over 100 million people, it barreled through 21 states in just 72 hours, spawning a 12-foot storm surge, derecho, tornado outbreak, life-threatening blizzard, and crippling ice storm, all before transitioning into a devastating New England nor'easter. Despite New Age computer models accurately forecasting its approach days in advance, over 300 people still lost their lives in the storm's fury. Today, in the wake of the 30th anniversary, we'll break down the many meteorological components that fell into place, the death and destruction that the superstorm ultimately caused, and how it represented a major success and significant turning point in modern weather forecasting technology. My name is Steve, and this is Weatherbox. Let's dive in. A lot of severe weather happened in the early 1990s in the United States. In August of 1991, Hurricane Bob veered up the Atlantic coast, striking New England as a rare Category 2. 1 year later, Hurricane Andrew tore through southern Florida as a Category 5 hurricane, causing cataclysmic damage to the city of Homestead. In fact, so many homes were condemned that the government set up a so-called tent city where residents who no longer had a place to live could seek shelter in hundreds of available tents and be provided basic necessities. Many people along the coast were left in varying compromising positions going into 1993. And while a slow warming trend of global temperature was observed throughout the late 80s and early 90s, which could have certainly fueled intense hurricanes, the warming trend suddenly reversed in June of 1991. On the 15th of June, Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines erupted with cataclysmic force, ejecting 1 cubic mile of volcanic material into the stratosphere. Perhaps the scariest part of the eruption was that it occurred as Typhoon Yunya, a Category 2 tropical cyclone, made landfall on Luzon, passing directly over the erupting volcano. As the ash below the troposphere mixed with rain from the typhoon, it fell back to Earth as large droplets of mud, making driving very difficult for last-minute evacuations. But the ash that made it into the stratosphere spread throughout the tropics within a few weeks, and eventually throughout the globe. This effect is measured by something called aerosol optical depth, which is the measure of aerosols like smoke particles, desert dust, sea salt within the stratosphere. And for the next 2 years after the eruption, the global aerosol optical depth was 10 to 100 times higher, which ultimately meant less energy from the sun was heating the Earth, lowering the global temperature by over a full degree Fahrenheit. The thing is, while globally the surface temperature was lower, winters in the eastern half of the United States are almost always warmer after a major eruption. In an examination of the northern hemisphere winter surface temperature patterns after the 12 largest volcanic eruptions from 1883 to 1992, it was found that in the 2 winters following these major tropical volcanic eruptions, North America and Eurasia experienced abnormally warm winters, while the Middle East experienced abnormally cold winters. And wouldn't you know it, the winter of January 1992 was the all-time warmest winter on record for much of the U.S. The average temperature for the entire winter across the 48 contiguous states was 36.87 degrees Fahrenheit, with 93.2% of the country reporting warmer than normal temperatures. The following winter, starting in December of 1992, would likely be warmer as well, but less so because it was now 18 months since the Pinatubo eruption. The winter forecast issued by NOAA predicted above-average temperature in the northern and western regions of the U.S., with below-average temperatures from Texas to Maine, with the highest probability over western North Carolina. One thing's for sure, the year started off with much more snow. On December 10th, a surface low near Virginia moved off the Atlantic coast and became a nor'easter, dropping over 40 inches of snow in western Maryland and 4 feet of snow in the Berkshires and Green Mountains of Massachusetts and Vermont. The storm surge and heavy rains caused the New York subway system to flood as 70-mile-an-hour winds tore through the heart of downtown. In early January, 6 days of continuous blinding snowfall buried Salt Lake City in 26 inches of snow, one of the highest totals in the city's history. On January 20th, a powerful cyclone slammed into the Pacific Northwest, causing 75-mile-an-hour winds in Seattle and bringing widespread destruction to the Pacific Northwest coast. But much like how Mount Pinatubo had many smaller eruptions before the big one, the worst snowstorm of the year was yet to come. By the beginning of March, temperatures were fairly mild across the Midwest and Southeast, and as the first week progressed, an intense ridge began to build over the Pacific. The warm air wasn't limited just to Southern California. On March 9th, it was 70 in Denver, 85 in Dallas, 73 in Birmingham, and 72 in Raleigh. A stationary front slowly sagged south over the course of the few days, allowing cooler air to spill further south towards the Gulf of Mexico. But the Meteorological Operations Division of the National Weather Service was keeping an eye on the weather models for the week ahead, and the output was a bit concerning. Now, if you're watching this video, you're probably at least somewhat familiar with weather forecasting models. They can predict the future, and if you really want to have fun on
Why does this guy keep bouncing up and down? No offense, dude, but I just noticed that you keep bouncing. Like, is that your rhythm, or are you like?
In case you don't know, a weather forecasting model is quite simply a computer program that contains the mathematical equations that govern physics and thermodynamics in our atmosphere. The program is based on a 3-dimensional grid of points that represents a different point in space. These points are then given initial conditions from weather observations such as wind speed, temperature, dew point, and air pressure. The output data from these equations is then assimilated into the computer model at each point on the grid, and the equations are stepped forward in time. Obviously, the further out you try to predict, the less accurate the model's going to be. In the early 1990s, the 3 main models used by the MOT.
This is funny. I was finishing up my rice earlier today, and Shanti doesn't like the scrape like one. It was metal on porcelain, which I think it was porcelain. Yeah, and it was kind of making that scrape. I had a fork. I was trying to eat the rest of my rice as quickly as possible, and she's sitting there like. And I'm like, I'm sorry. She's like, you know, and I'm trying to do it quicker, and it's just like, I mean, give me a. It was fucking funny. It was funny because she was laughing. It was funny. Sorry, I just thought about that. I'm sorry.
D for forecasting were the Medium Range Forecast Model, the United Kingdom Meteorology Office Model, and the European Center for Medium Range Forecast Model, or more passionately known as the Euro. Now, weather prediction isn't just reading the output of models. It takes a great deal of knowledge and skilled subjective interpretation of forecast models to accurately predict a weather event. This was much truer in the early 1990s.
Mm-hmm.
The first sign that a storm could impact the eastern U.S. came at the conclusion of the Zero-Z model runs on March 8, 1993. You're looking at a forecast map issued by the MOD Weather Forecast Branch based on the 132, 108, and 84-hour MRF and UK Met models, and the 144, 120, and 96-hour Euro forecast. That's a lot of numbers. These numbers that you see on the screen refer to the model name and the forecasted central pressure of the storm system. So for instance, M stands for Medium Range Forecast Model, or MRF, and 101 stands for 1001 millibars. The low was forecasted to make landfall near Mobile on Saturday, March 13th, and move up through New England as a nor'easter on Sunday the 14th. Now, 5 days out was a very far forecast for 1993, and the results were greeted with skepticism by forecasters. But over the next 48 hours, the models held the line, but with slight differences in cyclone location. The Zero-Z March 10th UK Met model now showed the low centered over northern Georgia on Saturday the 13th, but the MRF model had it over Savannah, and the Euro had it off the west coast of Florida. It was unclear how far south the low would develop, but everything else indicated that a historic winter storm was falling into place. The models were in agreement that a major upper-level trough would dig down over the eastern half of the United States, with a jet streak, or an area of fast-moving winds in the jet stream, centered over the Great Lakes. These three pieces of the puzzle appeared to be in place, and while the exact position and path of the low was still to be determined, it would likely be historic. As the day progressed on March 10th, MOD forecasters decided to issue summary statements at 6-hour intervals to the weather community. Terms were used such as unusually severe and perhaps record-breaking, and the 16Z statement on Thursday the 11th stated the storm could be of historic proportions along the East Coast with potentially record-setting snows over the interior portions. Now, obviously, when the National Weather Service uses language like this, the media takes notice, and by the end of the night, the impending blizzard was on national news. Throughout the day on the 10th, an intense ridge aloft was building off the Pacific coast, often a precursor to an amplified digging trough to the east. One more huge improvement in weather forecasting came on December 7th, 1992, when the MOD began using ensemble forecasts. See, prior to December 7th, a single model run was conducted each day for a 10-day period at the highest resolution possible, outputting a single forecast. But with an ensemble forecast, 14 individual model runs are conducted with very slightly differing initial conditions, outputting 14 individual 10-day forecasts. This cemented the fundamental ideology that medium-range forecasts are stochastic in nature, or contain random distributions that cannot be precisely predicted. There is no single solution to a forecast, rather a range of possible solutions, and averaging these solutions out can help get rid of some of the forecasting errors. This is most apparent to the everyday person when looking at forecasted hurricane tracks on the news. There isn't a single precise line that the hurricane is predicted to follow. It's an expanding cone that gets larger the further out the hurricane is from landfall. The MRF ensemble product greatly assisted forecasters in predicting the heavy snowfall, as well as it likely being an East Coast storm. There was also one new parameter called conditional probability of snow, or CPOS, which consistently showed potential for heavy snow accumulation along the spine of the Blue Ridge Mountains. But the ensemble MRF also had some flaws. Most importantly, it failed to predict the rapid strengthening of the low as it moved ashore from the Gulf of Mexico. Instead, it predicted the low intensifying greatly over New England. This is significant because the waters in the Gulf of Mexico were a whopping 3 degrees Celsius warmer than normal for that time of year. clear. At 8 a.m. Eastern on March 11th, the surface low that would be the superstorm formed near Monterrey, Mexico, drifting off to the east. It was at this time that the winter storm watches started being issued by weather forecast offices, offering many areas in the path of the storm nearly 50 hours of lead time. Within the next 24 hours, 2 individual shortwave troughs, or these smaller kinks in the jet stream, quickly swung down from the northern Rockies, the southeastern trough reaching the Gulf first. Winds within this jet streak were moving at a blazing 140 knots.
Damn.
This greatly increased vorticity to the east, or the spin in the atmosphere, which was now sitting over the developing cyclone, allowing air to rise. The area to the east of the low was a strong baroclinic zone, or an area with a tight temperature gradient, aided by the abnormally warm waters near a southward moving cold air mass east of the Rockies. Every single parameter was in place for explosive cyclone growth, and by the morning of the 12th, cyclogenesis was well underway. The central pressure of the low began falling rapidly as it drifted to the east. General cloudiness was observed on satellite near the low center, slowly forming a comma head shape, a feature typical of extratropical cyclones. At 4 p.m. Eastern, light snow was falling across Alabama and Mississippi with enough accumulation to cover the spring daffodils in full bloom. By the evening of March 12th, the cyclone was off the coast of New Orleans with a squall line starting to form along the associated cold front. Southerly winds formed a strong low-level jet ahead of the cold front, which pumped tons of warm, moist air into the cyclone, causing the rapid development of rain along the warm front as well as near the cyclone center. These strong, stormy, extratropical cyclones are more often than not found over the Great Plains in the Midwest because that's where all the ingredients come together in spring. The one benefit that these land-based cyclones have is the land that they traverse over provides friction, which actually slows the wind at the surface down quite a lot. Derechos still impact the Midwest, which are fast-moving bands of thunderstorms with destructive winds. We're talking like 80 miles an hour. August 10th, 2020, May 12th, 2022, there have been some historic derechos, but all of those were over land. This explosive squall line with embedded supercells was flying to the east over warm ocean waters and would likely strike the west coast of Florida around midnight in complete darkness while the people at risk were asleep. To make matters worse, this derecho was not that well forecasted. While a tornado watch was issued several hours before the derecho hit, the squall line itself only took a couple hours to form. This wasn't like a tropical cyclone, where the perpetual rain bands exist circulating around the center and you could see it approaching from 500 miles away. With mid-latitude cyclones in unstable atmospheres, storm development happens incredibly fast. And while severe thunderstorm warnings with 90-mile-an-hour wind tags were issued in the 10 o'clock hour, most people just didn't see those warnings. They were in bed. On top of this, the cold front itself, located about 100 miles west of the derecho, contained additional 70-mile-an-hour winds, so it would be a long, windy night on the west coast of Florida. At around this time in the evening, the trough in the jet stream aloft exhibited an extreme negative tilt, indicating extremely fast winds aloft and intense vorticity, fueling the explosive cyclogenesis occurring underneath. The low continued to deepen as it approached Apalachicola, and at 11 p.m., the fully formed derecho moved ashore in western Florida. 95-mile-an-hour winds battered Clearwater, causing a 12-foot storm surge to the north at Pine Island. Dozens of homes up and down the coast were destroyed by the storm surge. The line of storms extended down into Cuba, hitting Havana with over 100-mile-an-hour wind gusts, with a reanalysis done by the Institute of Meteorology of Cuba estimating 130-mile-an-hour wind gusts. Cuba saw the worst of the damage, suffering $1 billion economic loss from the storm. Around 40,000 homes were at least partially destroyed. Back in Florida, 11 tornadoes touched down across the state from the embedded supercells, with the maximum rating being F2. One of these F2s hit a mobile home park in Chiefland, killing 3. Another tornado actually went through a tent city, where people who lost their homes in Hurricane Andrew were currently living in tents. It was a nightmarish scenario in Florida. As the squall line was tearing through the heart of Florida, the low center moved ashore near Apalachicola, setting an all-time low-pressure record for Tallahassee at just 976 millibars. The moisture from the southerly low-level jet was now condensing at an explosive rate to the north, causing the first-ever thundersnow in Mobile, Alabama. Blizzard warnings were in place for the entirety of the Appalachian Mountains through Pennsylvania, and heavy snow warnings were extended into extreme northwestern Alabama, where it became apparent that all-time time snowfall records would easily be broken. The resulting snowflakes were huge wet clusters, piling up quickly at rates over 3 inches an hour, all during 45-mile-an-hour winds. James Spann was on the air throughout the night in Birmingham, Alabama, keeping residents updated as the temperatures plummeted into the mid-20s. This fantastic moment was caught on camera, audible proof of the rare thundersnow.
Damage, straight line wind damage in Tampa, and if you can hear that, we've had a tremendous lightning crash outside the station here, part of this thunder snowstorm we are experiencing.
One of the camera operators who was out in the blizzard also caught this fantastic moment.
You tell me that that's Valley Avenue there, and I can barely recognize that because the snow is so heavy.
Exactly there was the flash right there of the lightning. It struck very close to me.
With power lines
That is
falling all
fucking
throughout the state
crazy.
and very few plows to clear the 6 inches already on the roads, it was clear that the blizzard was an unprecedented, life-threatening situation for Alabama. By 5 a.m., the low center was over Vidalia, Georgia, with the central pressure at 971 millibars and falling, a pressure on par with a Category 2 hurricane. The warm, moist air from the Atlantic was getting sucked into the low at tremendous speeds, meeting the 6,000-foot peaks of the Blue Ridge Mountains in North Carolina and Tennessee, then getting forced up the peaks, creating the worst blizzard
Yeah, I'm gonna
conditions
make some coffee
seen
here in a minute.
years. Somehow, dozens of people were hiking along the peaks of Smoky Mountains National Park, where just a few days prior, the weather had been beautiful and mild. Among those hiking was a group of students from Michigan who were practicing survival skills using minimalistic shelters and carrying little to no gear. They woke up early on the 13th to collapsed tents buried under 3 feet of snow. Stuck for several days, they suffered severe frostbite and barely survived, requiring hand and foot amputations.
God
Those
bless.
that made it back to their cars were luckier, as the vehicle became a suitable, livable shelter while waiting for the National Guard. In Asheville, residents woke up to over a foot of snow on the ground, and with winds funneling into the French Broad River Valley, whiteout conditions made travel impossible. By 9 a.m., the low center was over Raleigh, North Carolina at just 966 millibars. State officials in Pennsylvania mobilized the National Guard and closed down interstates across the entire state prior to the blizzard striking, a move only made possible by the 50 hours of lead time given by
Hell
forecasters.
yes.
For the
Wow.
first time ever, New York officials had activated the emergency alert system for a blizzard warning, pushing it to all radios and television sets statewide. One thing that was still uncertain for cities on the East Coast was the exact location of the rain-snow line. A path difference of 20 miles can be the difference between getting an inch of rain or a foot of snow, and with many major metropolitan areas on the East Coast being in such close proximity to each other, correctly predicting the rain-snow line was crucial. Yet another advancement in weather technology that played a huge role in forecasting this event was the implementation of WSR-88D radar systems, which offered a much higher resolution, as well as the addition of a velocity product. One of the first operational WSR-88D systems in the country was located in Sterling, Virginia, which covered the D.C. metropolitan area. Individual bands of snow and ice pellets were tracked precisely across eastern Virginia, and nowcasts were issued every hour to warn those in the heavy band's path. Not only that, but the Weather Forecasting Office was able to take ground-based observations of where that rain-snow line was and compare it to the radar imagery that they were receiving at the time. The low center was now approaching the greater DC area, and with 6 inches of snow already on the ground, the associated 70-mile-an-hour wind gusts were grinding the city to a complete stop. The mixture of sleet and snow made travel impossible in the nation's capital. Strong winds blowing out of the east funneled ocean waters into coastal towns in Delaware and New Jersey, such as Seabright. Many of these towns had not yet recovered from the December nor'easter just 3 months prior. To the west of D.C., the ridges and valleys of western Virginia, western Maryland, and the Appalachian Plateau of West Virginia were getting buried in more snow than they had seen in decades. Because the path of the low center stayed west of the Atlantic coast over North Carolina, which is not really typical of a nor'easter, most of the moisture and cold air flowed over the Appalachian Plateau, resulting in record 24-hour snow totals. In Pennsylvania, even though interstates were closed across the state, city officials in Pittsburgh decided not to cancel their St. Patrick's Day parade scheduled for that morning. In fact, it was the only parade on the entire East Coast that wasn't canceled. By noon, the snow was falling at rates of 3 inches an hour. Hundreds of vehicles were left stranded on city streets. 23.6 inches of snow fell within those 24 hours, a record that still stands today. To the east in Latrobe, 3 feet of snow fell with drifts as high as 10 feet. As Saturday progressed, the southeasterly winds ferociously battered the coast of Long Island, New York. Many residents along the coast waited until the blizzard had already begun to consider leaving, and that made matters much more difficult. In the afternoon, with 10 to 20 foot waves already crashing onto the coast, officials began transporting tons of sand to coastal areas, dumping it via bulldozers in an attempt to stop further erosion. While the wind and sleet was pelting New York City, unfathomable snow was falling to the north in upstate New York. For cities like Syracuse, which had seen over 125 inches of snow that winter already, the superstorm was just adding insult to injury. Well, actually it was like adding injury to injury. The day before, Wegmans sold 300% of their daily average sales of merchandise. Some customers of Video King rental service were renting out 7 VHS movies at a time to watch during the blizzard, which wasn't even enough because for 48 hours the snow on that northwestern side of the low didn't stop. Enhanced by moisture from Lake Ontario, the greater Syracuse area saw nearly 43 inches of snow by Monday morning. By noon on Sunday the 14th, the low center had passed near Boston, holding steady at 962 millibars. The entirety of New England proceeded to get 10 to 20 inches of snow within that 24-hour period, with higher elevations receiving double that amount. All major airports, interstates, and turnpikes were closed. All state highways were impassable. By the time the storm had finally moved out of Maine on Sunday evening, the entire eastern third of the United States was completely out of sorts. The largest snowfall happened on Mount LeConte in Tennessee, a 6,600-foot peak in the Smoky Mountains. Between 50 and 60 inches officially fell at the peak, an inescapable amount of snow even for the most experienced hikers. Mount Mitchell to the east wasn't too far behind, seeing 50 inches, which took an entire month to completely melt. All-time low record pressure readings were set in Newark, Philly, D.C., Wilmington, and Wilkes-Barre. 60,000 lightning strikes were observed across the eastern U.S. during the storm, many occurring within snow squalls. An estimated 318 people lost their lives in various ways, freezing to death while hiking in the Smokies, getting washed out to sea by the derecho-induced storm surge in Florida, getting into a car accident while attempting to drive through the freezing rain. Many people in Florida failed to appreciate the magnitude of the impending storm because it was extra tropical.
And 3 years later, we would have the blizzard of '96 too. I remember that one.
In nature. The general feeling was that if it wasn't a hurricane, it was no big deal. The storm caused over $5 billion in damage across 21 states, affecting nearly 30% of the entire U.S. population. But amidst all the chaos, the Meteorology Operations Division, in conjunction with the local forecasting offices, absolutely nailed their forecasts. Retrospective analyses of the event shows that medium-range forecast models, especially the new Ensemble products, were critical in predicting where the greatest snow totals were going to be, and Ensemble products are still widely used for weather forecasting today. Not only that, but the usage of the WSR-88D radar in Sterling, Virginia showed the forecasters how much more information they could give residents in the forecast area when it came to a snowstorm. We're not talking about rotating winds in a supercell thunderstorm visible via velocity products. These were primarily convective squalls that produced snow and sleet, and still the new radar system provided so much more useful information. It will likely be a great while until we see another snowstorm of that magnitude make landfall on the Gulf Coast and then right up the East Coast like the superstorm did in '93. But whenever that happens next, we will be able to predict it. And there better not be anyone hiking in the Smokies who gets caught off guard by the storm. With all our modern technology, there's just no excuse for not being weather aware. If you guys have any personal stories about the superstorm of '93, please share it in the comments below. My favorite thing is to read your guys' personal stories about weather events that I've covered. And if you want to learn more about weather through past historical events, definitely subscribe, like, and comment. That helps me out more than you can imagine, and I will see you guys soon.
All right, I'm gonna go smoke a cigarette real quick, stretch my legs, and then we will take a nostalgia trip to the way back when time and look at Erie, Indiana. I did this on my own several years ago. I looked into Erie, Indiana because I remembered that sentient cyclone thing. And we should also look into monsters because that was a really good show too. Miss Ashante, maybe we should check out Monsters. I think it's available. At least a bunch of them are available on YouTube. But yeah. Let me put some music on for you guys while I'm out. Let's see. Yeah, it's 1 o'clock. Should be, it's like 1:18. We're on target, I think. Yeah. Oh, of course you're on my. Of course, Mr. Goofy's on my. What do you do? So I'm not gonna have my warm hoodie. So yeah, and I need to get some coffee anyway. like my Kakashi shirt. I'm not entirely sure where I got it, but Team 7 forever. I mean, I like a number of the other teams, but, you know, Team 7 forever. I miss Neji, though. Wednesday night. Alright, trash doesn't go out until tomorrow. The household, that's my job. Alright. Can't put my jammies on yet because Mr. Gomi is knocked the fuck out. So, okay. Alright. Where the fuck were we? Oh yes, we were gonna do. We're going to do in Erie. Yes, Erie, Indiana. Yes.
I think 1991 shaped my life before I even realized it did. Neon Flux, Heat and Heat, Clarissa Explains It All, Liquid Television, The Addams Family, People Under the Stairs, Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead.
Joe Blow Horror Originals. I'm already subscribed
all
to them,
those
but
shows
this
and
is
movies
new,
I just
so.
mentioned, I can still enjoy just the same as I did then. A few of them actually get repeat viewings throughout the year. There was something cool about these shows made for kids and teens around this time. They weren't dumbing it down. Kids felt like they were watching something that they could experience for themselves. It was something that felt real. These were kids that were actually my age tackling real issues through a more fantastical storyline. Shows made for kids, at least the live action ones, miss that mark now. They're overproduced, the storylines are entirely too dramatic, and they lack the charm. Look at Nickelodeon in the 90s versus now. There's definitely a difference.
Yes. Some of my favorite shows.
What's Erie, Indiana all about? Well, it's about a kid named Marshall Teller, played by Omri Katz, who's moved to the most normal town in the world, Erie, Indiana. Immediately upon arriving, Marshall finds out that Erie is anything but normal.
Thank you, boy.
With the help and assistance of his friend Simon, played by Justin Shinkaro, the boys spend their days investigating the paranormal ongoings of their town that no one else seems to find as eerie. I've seen people say that the series is like Twin Peaks for kids. And sure, maybe if you mean season 2, and that's a stretch. Maybe more inspired? I'd say it's more Friday the 13th, this series, with a dash of X-Files for kids. I get the Twin Peaks mention though. The series does feature Sheriff Andy as his when Sergeant Knight and Dash does utter the line,
"What ain't the log, lady?"
in an area of the woods that looks suspiciously like the entrance to the Black Lodge. Oh wait, they do go to a place called the Lodge in Loyal Order of the Corn. There's actually quite a few
there is a
pop
little bit of
references interwoven throughout the
yeah.
series. I could also easily see some of these episodes under the Twilight Zone umbrella. What's funny about all this, though, is that the show really wasn't meant for kids alone. One of the show's creators, Carl Schaefer, wanted to target the adult audience with a twisted sense of humor and social satire seen through the eyes of a 13-year-old. Schaefer and co-creator Jose Rivera spent most of their time as champions for the series, fighting for better time slots, creepier stories, and creating the best content for adults and kids alike. The intro is pretty rad as well. It drops in some scenes from classic films like Nosferatu, White Zombie, and Night of the Living Dead. Marshall talks about the weird occurrences within his town, like Bigfoot digging in the trash and Elvis grabbing the paper. Also, I love Dash X, and this has nothing to do with my long-standing crush on Jason Marsden. Nothing. There's this weird line in the sand where you either hate Dash or you love him. I've seen more disdain than anything. I love the introduction of Dash and the mystery that surrounds him. It's not a mystery anymore thanks to Schaefer, but it's nice to get some clarity after all these years. I won't spoil it for you, even though you probably already figured it out, but you can easily find the answer if you do a quick search. There are so many excellent things about this series. You have Joe Dante as creative consultant and sometimes director, John Aston, who comes in later as the true owner of World of Stuff, Bob Balaban, Tim Hunter, who directed River's Edge, Toby Maguire, Danielle Harris, and Matt Frewer star in episodes. Alex Hirsch of Gravity Falls, who we mentioned in a few episodes, basically said, "I want to make my own Eerie," and he did it with The Adventures of Dipper and Mabel. We could spend so much time on their series that it would need its own companion podcast. Maybe I should start one, honestly. Anyone want to join? So here are some of our favorite episodes. Foreverwhere,
possibly.
Episode 1. This is the first episode of the series, and I'm gonna hit you kind of hard with it. The episode deals with grief and the lack of control we have over our own lives. I know, it's a bit deep, but the series often tries to be more than just surface level without making it.
I remember the term moneybags from this show.
The idea of wanting to keep your kiddos from growing up so that you can keep them around forever, or
with the
slow or stop
the AI
after a loved one dies, is a legit thought process.
Ooh.
We don't learn this until closer to the end of the episode, but it gives you that aha moment when you find out.
Yeah, it was a good one too.
Then that becomes more complex when you reflect on all the ladies at the party that Marshall's mom attended. Quick Easter egg, since the show has so many. All the ladies at the party had food brand last names: Swanson, Stouffer, Pillsbury, and Crocker. As a kid, you don't really notice these themes. All it does is make you think twice about your mom's obsession with Tupperware. It's also easier to side with twins because you just want to grow up and experience life as your own person. It's a great concept that seems more silly when you're younger, but hits differently when you're watching as an adult. Also, Mary Margaret Humes, who plays Marshall's mom, later plays Dawson's mom on Dawson's Creek. Fun fact. Just Say No to Fun, Episode 6. Okay, so disturbing behavior may or may not have gotten the core of their plot from this episode, but maybe they both deserve to get a nod from 81's strange behavior. Mandatory eye exams? I guess it's plausible. It probably would have helped me a bit since I squinted through most of elementary school, but not this type of exam. When Marshall and Simon go to get their eyes checked by the school nurse,
"Don't worry, Mr. Teller. You'll be next."
Simon emerges with the stereotypical geeky glasses and has found an interest in studying and being a good boy. The middle school is named after well-noted psychologist B.F. Skinner. Sometimes we all just need a little positive reinforcement in the form of subliminal messages. The nurse hired with this school is doing just that. Her goal is to get all the kids in Erie and eventually all the grown-ups to believe in the power of all work and no fun. She wants to squash the imaginative mind of Marshall, as well as the other children, because it has no place in this world, or her world. Oh man, we could really go on about that, right? Thanks to some even goofier glasses that serve as an antidote to the conditioning, Marshall makes everything right again and restores the personalities of all the kids. As an adult, I'm still all for being imaginative and doing whatever brings you joy, as long as you aren't doing any harm, and especially if it involves paranormal investigation. The Losers, Episode 4. Where do all the things you lose go?
One of my favorite episodes.
Briefcases, petroleum-based banana extract. Yes. Marshall's dad misplaces his briefcase that happens to contain, again, petroleum-based banana extract. It's not about the extract, though. Oddly enough, it's about the fact that the briefcase was an anniversary present, and when Marshall's dad gives priority to the extract, Marshall's mom goes to her unhappy place. Words set out of frustration cause Marshall's parents to fight, which he hardly ever sees. The briefcase is a symbol of his parents' marriage, so he's gotta find it. Marshall and Simon find out that the briefcase got sucked into the Bureau of Lost. The Bureau isn't taking things, but I guess they're also somehow keeping the world on an even keel by helping the economy? This really sounds like adult problems. Henry Gibson, who I absolutely adore, but really adore in Biodome. Yes, Biodome. And Dick Miller from Night of the Creeps and Shopping Mall and everything. Both guest star in the episode and happen to be regulars in some of Joe Dante's other directorial efforts. Marshall does everything he can to get the briefcase back so his parents don't get divorced. It's a little extreme, but seeing your parents blow up on each other can be as well. Luckily, in the end, the tellers have taken a breather and decided that a briefcase really wasn't that big of a deal. Arguing over something stupid with your partner? Well, none of us
Spent
are
all my
familiar
energy
with
at work.
that. Thanks, Erie. Also, there's still something really cool about crawling through a dryer to get to a secret bureau of lost things. The Lost Hour, Episode 10. As a kid, you don't think about time, and you don't have time to think about it. Well, this is true, and it's also true that everyone, at least it feels that way, is annoyed with daylight savings time. Marshall decides to rebel against it, and by doing so wakes up in an alternate, more liminal Erie. With help from an extremely old milkman, Marshall escapes a group of garbage collectors who want to eliminate him and a lost runaway played by Nikki Cox. Nikki Cox is always delightful in whatever she's in, and she has one of the coolest jackets I have ever seen in this episode. As Janet and Marshall are taking off in the car, I swear there's a melody that plays that sounds an awful lot like Learning to Fly by Pink Floyd.
Better wear a seatbelt. I don't even have a learner's permit.
The twist at the end is great, and it makes you wonder even more what could have been the story of the series if they were given more seasons. Reality Takes a Holiday, Episode 19. And now we end with the final episode, or what was supposed to be the final episode. One day, Marshall is at the table with his family, who are trying to get him to take a break from the paranormal to go to the movies. And next, he ends up in the world of the small screen. Erie, Indiana becomes self-aware. Marshall is now Omri, the actor who plays Marshall, and he's part of a television show. Dash is somehow orchestrated so Marshall dies at the end of the 19th episode so that he can be the lead. As if we didn't see that coming. Joe Dante, who didn't direct this particular episode, shows up in the role of the director, and his screen time is very Dante. I will also admit that seeing Simon as a self-absorbed child actor was disheartening, even though I know the point was for their actor counterparts to be the exact opposite. Simon is just too pure for this world. But also so is Justin. Now, for me, this episode could mean two things. One, how we sometimes feel like we're going through the motions, or two, how we don't have to stick with the script that life gives us. You can also sprinkle in some Wizard of Oz in there. Whichever theme you go with, this episode was a great final episode, even though they didn't know it was the final one at the time. As a series, if you're gonna go out, might as well go out on a high. I wish we could just discuss all the episodes, but maybe it'd be better if we just did a binge of all of them. Bonus points if you haven't seen it yet. Oh, if you are interested in lost media like myself, there's a rumor that there's a tape missing episode out there titled Let's Get Hitched. If you have any info regarding this, please let me know. So, where can I watch that one season of Erie, Indiana? Right now, you can watch all the episodes on Prime. You can also watch them without commercials on YouTube. The series was also released on DVD and Blu-ray if you're into the physical. So, where to find them? As you likely all know by now, the series was canceled. What's worse is they pulled it early. They put it in the slot Sundays at 7 p.m. opposite the Torkelsons. This has been known as the slot where all series go to die, which was definitely the choice made by NBC. While I'm sure no one at the network lost any sleep over it, the series was actually quite successful in syndication and has gathered a cult following over the years.
Yeah,
There was a
it's
spin-off that came
really
and
good
went on
show.
Fox Kids in 1997 that was called Erie, Indiana, The Other Dimension. Sadly, not as awesome as the original. The second coming of Erie did help to get a book series going. Please don't mind me as I find those and start collecting them. Also, did me saying the Torkelsons unlock something in your brain? I hope it did. The show was way too clever and ahead of its time. It's also a good lesson, which we really are learning now, that networks could really care less how innovative a show is. We give mindless shows 20 seasons and let them hang on way past their prime. Erie may have lived a little longer now, but it wouldn't be the same. I'll take 19 episodes of Erie filmed back in the early 90s over trying to recreate it today. The show is a part of the golden age of kids programming and deserves a place with the other sci-fi greats. Erie, Indiana, thanks for making all of us weird kids feel, well, comfortable with our weirdness.
Amen. Final Fantasy 16. Once you've played a couple, you've played them all. Oh, okay. Yeah.
See the Great Passion Play in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, just 48 scenic miles south of Branson, Missouri. Witness the power and majesty of the Great Passion Play as a cast of hundreds bring to life the thrilling epic drama of the greatest story ever told.
Hello, and welcome back to the world of religious theme parks. While this video is very much intended to stand on its own, it is in many ways a spiritual successor, no pun intended, to the video I produced a while back that covered a number of Christian-themed parks. Since that time, I have been exposed to a lot of new places that represent other religions, often in the craziest form imaginable, and it's just, well, fantastic and strange. Now, of course, in my initial video, a lot of people pointed out to me that I missed commenting on Heritage USA, a Christian theme park built by televangelist Jim Bakker in the late 1970s. I know it must sound bizarre because the park was so prolific, but I managed to have not heard about it before producing that particular video. In the meantime, I've been keeping a list of other theme parks or experiences, whether Christian themed or otherwise, that I thought would make for interesting commentary and discussion. While I do very much intend for this video to be a follow-up to that exploration of Christian parks, I did want to expand the scope and dive into other interesting territory as well. This is going to include places such as Sui Teen, a Buddhist-themed park with a number of very odd rides and attractions, including a pretty sizable water park inside as well.
Wow.
On the other hand, we'll explore complexes such as Hall Parvilla, where you'll dive into the depths of the Taoist afterlife, quite literally advertising itself as a one-way ticket to hell, in the most literal sense. We will also continue covering a variety of additional Christian-themed exhibits, and even one of the most bizarre proposals for a park that I've ever seen, focusing on turning the Jewish spirit into what has been described as the Jewish Disney World. So without further delay, let's dive right into the absolutely strange world of religious theme parks.
Wait. Was that guy in the business suit going down a water slide? I mean, more power to you, but really? A business suit? You don't... Okay. All right. Do you, sir? If you didn't know, this is Poseidon Entertainment.
So, previously, I discussed the long-abandoned Holy Land, USA, located in Waterbury, Connecticut. What made this place interesting was not just its history, but also that it was a small-scale walkthrough of buildings and scenes found throughout the Bible and in Jerusalem. However, thanks to Diggo in the comments of that video, he was able to provide me with a bit more context on similar attractions. The first place I would like to explore is the San Vivaldo Monastery, located in Monteone, Italy. Named after Vivaldo, a Franciscan tertiary, a chapel was erected in 1325. A church would then be built in 1355, and the site would act as a typical Christian institution of its time. However, in 1500, a group of friars would commission the Sacro Monte, or Sacred Mountain, a series of buildings and geographic features meant to replicate holy sites in Jerusalem. From 1500 to 1516, 25 chapels were built, though today only 15 remain, with 3 of them having been added in later years. These chapels were intended to serve locals as a form of going on a faux pilgrimage to Jerusalem, as that opportunity was too financially ambitious and often quite dangerous for regional residents at that time. Inside, visitors would find statues made of terracotta, creating scenes meant to display the Passion of Christ. While certainly not a theme park by any contemporary understanding, I feel that the monastery could be considered a precursor to themed entertainment that would come centuries later, in its attempt to immerse visitors into a recreation of Jerusalem's holy sites. However, many similar displays would become popular around this time, especially in Italy. Known too as a sacred mountain or a Calvary, these would be quite similar to what exists at San Vivaldo, consisting of a series of chapels built on a hill in which people can embark on a faux pilgrimage. Again, not really a themed experience as we understand it, but I thought these were interesting enough to throw into the conversation. In a similar vein of displaying Christian iconography, another place I would like to briefly discuss is Desert Christ Park, located in Yucca Valley, California. It was established in 1951 by Reverend Eddie Garver on 5 acres of land that he acquired the year prior. Garver was a friend of Anton Martin, an engineer and sculptor who created a statue of Christ, made out of steel-reinforced concrete that he intended to place overlooking the Grand Canyon. However, after being denied his request to place the statue there, he came to an agreement with Harvard that it would
Nice
be placed
thought,
on a
but it
hill
looks like
overlooking
garbage.
his land.
Nice thought, though.
From there, Martin would move to Yucca Valley and continue creating statues,
And
buildings,
I don't.
and dioramas.
I mean, yeah.
for the park.
I think it would be just like
While meant more
that
as
just
a
wouldn't
leisurely
fit right.
space, meant to educate people on biblical stories, the website does describe it as a themed park, which I think is accurate and therefore fits into the theme of the video.
Some of it's pretty
Another
nice.
mildly interesting Christian-themed attraction is the Great Passion Play, the anchor attraction of a larger Christian-themed complex located in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. The actual performance itself is a dramatization of the life of Jesus, though using so many actors and animals makes it seem expensive to run, so I suspect its heyday may be long behind it. Otherwise, a number of other attractions in the complex include an educational tour of a faux Jerusalem, a Christian art museum, and a Bible museum with some pretty historically significant and well-preserved copies of the text. The complex also features the Christ of the Ozarks, the second largest Jesus statue in the world, though still significantly smaller than Christ the Redeemer in Rio. While interesting without context, on my brief research of the statue, I discovered that it and the amphitheater in the park were commissioned in the 1960s by Gerald L.K. Smith, a vocal racist, anti-Semite, and Holocaust denier. So while I think that the complex today is very much devolved from his influence, it was founded with problematic nationalistic intentions, which definitely changes the context. If you're interested in learning more information about this park, the website will literally provide you with a file from a 2006 promotional DVD, so that's pretty much how I view this place, stuck in that era, even if still open today. The last small Christian exhibit that I would like to highlight is Noah's Ark in Hong Kong. The land was actually originally purchased back in the 1990s, in the hopes that Disney would choose it as the location for their new Hong Kong Disneyland. However, that obviously never happened, and Noah's Ark opened in 2007. This museum-like exhibit is otherwise pretty straightforward, teaching the biblical story of the flood. The building is surrounded by gardens filled with statues of animals, and inside there's even a few birds and reptiles. What I do find amusing, though, is that the website claims that it's the world's first full-size ark, which must drive Ken Ham absolutely nuts, because both buildings look completely different. Also worth noting is that the builders of the ark, Thomas and Raymond Kwok, are Hong Kong real estate developers and evangelical Christians. In 2014, Thomas was arrested for bribing the Chief Secretary of Administration of Hong Kong, around the time the ark was built. This is a component of a wider scandal to use the ark as an excuse to remove local villagers from the land, opening up further property development in the future. So, hopefully, this small selection of Christian-themed parks and experiences that I've just highlighted were interesting. They're
If not a
certainly
bit
as
creepy.
wild as the parks I covered in the video on Christian theme parks, but I think they're still worth commenting on. However, I did promise you some truly bizarre and exciting experiences, so let's move on to the really juicy stuff. Hey, just a quick favor, but if you made it this far, you can help the video out by hitting the like button. Videos like this take a ton of time to research and write, so leaving a like is a great way to support the channel. Moving outside of Christianity, the first place I would like to take a look at is Swaminarayan Akshardham, located in New Delhi. Named after Swaminarayan, a spiritual leader believed to have been a manifestation of the god Krishna in the early 19th century, this complex opened in 2005 as a Hindu temple, displaying
Wow.
different facets of Hindu values and culture. As you can see, the architecture is absolutely intricate and stunning, as you often find in temples like this. The complex offers a number of different impressive buildings with different functions, but what makes it so remarkable and fitting for this video is that it actually contains themed attractions. The first is the Hall of Values, a walkthrough exhibit using complex scenes and animatronics to portray various spiritual teachings. Second, a film focusing on the spiritual journey of a young Swaminarayan wandering India can be viewed in a large theater. Last, the complex actually features a boat ride, Sanskruti Darshan. This is described as a cultural boat ride, taking riders through 10,000 years of Indian history. While it doesn't have any animatronics, at least as far as I can tell, it does consist of a series of figures and dioramas. There's not much out there that really shows the content of the ride, but it is quite intriguing from what little I can see.
That's
Before
nice.
we move on though, I think it's also worth mentioning that the complex ends out each night with a fountain show.
Wow.
Using lasers, fog, and mapped projections on the building behind the fountains, this 24-minute show tells the story of a flower created by children and the trials they face against the jealousy of the gods who attempt to destroy it. As someone completely unfamiliar with Indian history and Hinduism, much of what is offered in the complex is lost on me. However, I do find it remarkable, nonetheless.
Still nice, though.
Especially since I do think that it essentially constitutes a theme park.
Yeah.
Moving on to something quite a bit stranger, though, let's take a quick look at the planned concept for Plain, or Park of Wonders, a Jewish theme park proposed for Israel. In this video, developed as a pitch for the park, a grandfather wanders into a room with his grandson and scolds him for always playing on his tablet. The grandson retorts, asking him what he did back in his day before computers. His grandfather responds by taking out a book and talking about how great they are, highlighting how the one he is holding contains their family tree. Naturally, the grandson responds that heritage is boring. The grandfather blows dust off of the book, and it begins to magically reanimate antiques throughout the room. Suddenly, a futuristic smartphone appears, and the video only continues to get weirder.
Grandpa, press on that.
Step inside the Jewish wonderland, Park Plain, where thousands of years of Jewish values and heritage is brought to life right before your eyes. At the very center of the park is its heart, towering above all, Jacob's Ladder. Its significance is as it stands, reaching the sky, linking God and man, heaven and earth, and the spiritual to the physical. The entire park.
Okay, well, that's quite odd, and architecturally ambitious.
Have to go there.
Behold, the People of the Book roller coaster, the high-speed thrilling ride that traverses pages and books of the Jewish people.
At this
Grandpa
point,
almost
the
looked
entire thing
Uncanny
also
Valley
seems like
there for a
parody.
minute there.
However, when you
It's
think
just
it can't
the
become any more
lighting.
ridiculous,
What's that?
The Shabbat attraction lets the visitor experience the contrast between the craziness of modern life and the tranquility of Shabbat. Shabbat is the time for loved ones, personal reflection, and a connection to the Almighty.
So, obviously this park doesn't exist, and I highly doubt that it will ever be built. While it very much feels like a joke, it was genuinely pitched by two rabbis in 2018. It contains 5 themed lands. These will be the world of spirit, the world of the Jewish nation, the world of society, and the world of time, in addition to the Oasis, which looks to be this park's version of a main street. Again, it feels like a parody, but I think it takes the cake for most bizarre park, based on an Abrahamic religion. Moving on yet again to something radically different, the Madu Daishin Temple in Taiwan is another architecturally significant complex that's quite intriguing. This attraction was brought up by Alejandro Thomas, and the site has been used.
So, like, I mean, it doesn't look too far off from what the Jewish people were conceiving with their park. I mean, this is kind of ostentatious, probably not as big as what the other the Jewish park was like was thinking like about, but I mean, still, like, yeah.
To practice Taoism since the 17th century, but the current iteration of the temple was built in 1955. The dragon was later added in 1979. However, what makes this so interesting is that in addition to the architecture, the inside of the temple became an exhibit built in 1982, portraying the 18 levels of hell. It's my understanding that this concept is an amalgamation of influences from Chinese mythology, Taoism, and Buddhism. However, what's being portrayed through a series of animatronic scenes here is a concept of a Chinese hell, where wrongdoers are punished for an indeterminate period of time, depending on the crimes that they committed during their life. The first level concerns judgment, where spirits are sentenced depending on their crimes. The other levels of hell correspond with different sins, and the punishments are tailored to each. For example, the second level is reserved for corrupt officials, who are beheaded repeatedly on a tiger guillotine. Another example is the 11th level, where thieves, kidnappers, and fraudsters are crushed by a grindstone.
It's like somebody read Dante's Inferno.
Throughout their lives, a person may go through any number of levels. However, at the end of their journey, after their sins have been punished out of them, they are given an elixir of forgetfulness, and are then reincarnated. For those who have achieved enlightenment, the exhibit also seems to contain scenes of paradise, in which enlightened individuals break the cycle of reincarnation and live among the gods. At least, that's my understanding of it, as someone who knows very little about religion and philosophy in East Asia. The exhibit itself is absolutely fascinating in its content matter, and as someone who has a personal affinity for lower budget animatronics and set design, which have a certain type of specific charm to them, I really like what I'm seeing here. It very much reminds me of a lower budget roadside haunted house you would find somewhere in the United States. However, I've discovered that this type of attraction isn't actually as unique as it appears. So, let's explore further.
See?
Located in Singapore, Hall Par Villa was originally established as Tiger Balm Gardens, named after a medicinal product invented by the father of the two brothers who founded the park, All Boon Hall and All Boon Par. It opened in 1937 with a villa and exhibits meant to teach about Buddhist, Confucian, and Taoist mythology. However, the Japanese inhabited the villa during World War II, and afterwards it was demolished. Following the Japanese defeat in 1945, the land was established as a public park, though Boon Hall commissioned statues and dioramas that taught Chinese mythology and values. Through the decades, the park would go through a number of owners, aiming to revitalize its aging displays, and today, the outside portion is free, allowing visitors to experience a number of exhibits relating to Chinese mythology, as well as Buddhism and Taoism. However, of most notable interest is the Museum of the 10 Courts of Hell, a similar attraction to the one found at the Madu Daishin Temple. The museum begins with a short video, chronicling the development of religions throughout East and West Asia, highlighting the differences in speaking about different interpretations of the afterlife. Once exiting this portion, a number of exhibits explore these interpretations further, before eventually bringing visitors to an indoor building, which portrays the 10 Courts of Hell. While similar, this interpretation has a number of distinct differences from the exhibit at the Madu Daishin Temple, if you study them closely. It's my understanding that this particular interpretation is a bit older, as the 18 Courts of Hell were later adopted during the Tang Dynasty. While this exhibit does not contain any animatronics, and is not as gruesome as the one previously mentioned, it still is quite the interesting experience. In conjunction with all the outside exhibits portraying various stories and mythology, Hall Par Villa definitely seems like an intriguing place to visit. Of the parks located in Asia though, the most interesting is definitely Sui Tien. Translated as Fairy Stream, Sui Tien is located in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam, and is designed as a Buddhist theme park. While intriguing, I will say that the park does seem like a bit of a mess though. It's massive and contains a number of different areas, including one with a number of unthemed and nauseating-looking flat rides. The park also contains a roller coaster, appropriately named Roller Coaster, which might just also have the most comically slow lift hill I've ever seen. Once it eventually gets going, the track layout is an unremarkable series of small hills that the train slowly crests over, making me wonder how often it must inevitably valley and get stuck on the track. When walking around the grounds, visitors will find a ton of gardens, as well as massive sculptures and beautifully designed temples scattered throughout, which certainly reinforces the Buddhist theme. However, the park does contain a number of other interesting attractions as well. Snow Castle appears to be a snow-themed indoor building with ice slides. The park also offers the Crocodile Kingdom, an attraction that reminds me quite a bit of Gatorland, as you can dangle raw meat in front of hundreds of crocodiles to feed them.
Wow.
Another attraction is the Fairy Phoenix Palace, which seems to describe the building and not the actual ride. It is itself an indoor dark ride where riders board a raft that spins on the water. The ride seems to consist of a journey through the jungle, where riders will encounter a number of jump scares with an animatronic gorilla. They will face perilous obstacles such as crocodiles or jungle trials.
Wow.
I'm not sure what the ride is intending to convey, or if it has any religious connection, but it is at the very least quite interesting.
It's a little confusing.
However, I believe that it was more recently converted into a walkthrough attraction that is more akin to a cheap haunted house, filled with motion detector jump scares as people move along the old ride track. It's difficult to tell what I'm looking at, as so little information on this park exists, but I believe that this is still the same building. The park also seems to contain a number of other bizarre attractions, such as the Magic Castle, another haunted house walkthrough filled with jump scares, but themed to Harry Potter. I'm quite sure that this is unlicensed, but that's part of what makes it so interesting. Another attraction is the Artifacts Gallery, filled with fossils and curiosities, such as preserved animals with extra heads and appendages. I'm not sure if these are real or fabricated, but it's disturbing all the same. There's also the Tunnel Through the Ground, which starts with you entering an elephant-shaped structure, but turns into a dark ride. Once you board, the vehicle brings you through what I believe is an ancient Egyptian tomb. Towards the end, riders travel through a scene that I presume represents the Egyptian Duat, a realm where souls would be judged. So, does that count as a religious-themed experience? While I haven't really spoken much about it yet, the park does contain a number of experiences that do link to Buddhism. Most prominent of these is the water park, which uses actual seawater and is flanked by sculptures that represent Vietnamese mythology and history. It's difficult to find information on what exactly this all relates to, though I am under the impression that it does link back to Buddhism in some form. Another haunted house style walkthrough is the Secret of the Ko'ola Citadel, filled with motion triggered effects, and even staff inside who will grab at your ankles.
Shit.
While I'm not entirely positive if this experience is related to the Buddhist conception of hell, I am under the impression that it probably is. But again, information is difficult to come by for this park. However, I can definitively say that there is one attraction that does relate to this. The Unicorn Palace is again another haunted house walkthrough attraction, this time taking you through the Buddhist conception of the levels of hell, quite similar to the other attractions already mentioned earlier in the video. What makes this different is that it's full of actual jump scares for the sake of entertainment, but I do love
They love their doom and gloom.
While not all the attractions at Suiteen relate to Buddhism, the park's plethora of temples, pagodas, and Buddhist iconography certainly do work to establish this as a religious theme park. Of the attractions I've discussed so far, it's certainly the most intriguing to me. However, I think it's time we finally take a look at one of the most bizarre and controversial religious theme parks thus far.
Oh, yes? Show me.
One of the more recent developments in organized religion has been the Christian theme park, the theme being the Bible, and the park having all the excitement and many of the devices of a Disneyland. The one Cassandra Clayton visited in South Carolina is the third most popular theme park in America, 5 million visitors last year.
Heritage USA was the creation of Jim and Tammy Baker, fundamentalist Christians and televangelists who rose to fame in the early 1970s. They originally launched a children's show titled Come On Over in 1965, but Jim would move on from there to host the 700 Club, a Christian variety show on the Christian Broadcasting Network the following year. However, Jim would leave the show in 1973, starting up the PTL, or Praise the Lord Club, the following year, which would grow in popularity immensely over just a short period of time. Having raised millions of dollars over just a few years and adding Tammy as his co-host, the couple would build Heritage USA, which opened in 1978 as a Christian theme park, but would also be the location of their new state-of-the-art studio. As the third largest theme park in the world by attendance, beaten out only by Disneyland and the Magic Kingdom, it sat on 23 acres of land and hosted a number of different activities.
Wow.
One of its attractions was a strip of shops called Main Street USA, which embraced what I can only describe as Christian consumerism. These shops would include Christian art, Tammy's own Christian music albums, dolls of biblical figures, scripture-based baked goods, and a variety of other items. The park was designed to evoke feelings of attending a high-budget Christian summer camp, offering church services, Bible studies, spiritual counseling, faith healing, and even a campground with a variety of activities such as tennis and horseback riding. For those who wanted a more comfortable stay, though, the property did contain the lavish 501-room Heritage Grand Hotel. Attractions were not very prominent, though there was both a carousel and a train ride around the property. The largest attraction was easily the water park, though, which was built for $12 million in 1986, and was, I think, intended to fit into the idea of an expanded summer camp. Concerning entertainment, the park also included a Christian dinner theater and a Jesus Passion play, chronicling the last days before his crucifixion. It's also very much worth mentioning the Christmas celebration known as Christmas City, occurring seasonally every year and dressing the park up in Christmas lights, while also hosting a nightly parade. Over the course of its existence, the Bakers reportedly raised and spent over $175 million developing the property that also included their studio and a residential area for 1,200 residents. There was at one point plans for a major expansion, including more hotels, as well as a partially built castle that would have included an arcade, a go-kart track, and the world's largest Wendy's.
Wow.
However, major financial trouble would hit the Bakers when a number of Jim's scandals came to light. The first is that the park offered what it called lifetime partnerships, a program where patrons would pay $1,000 to spend 3 free nights at the hotel every year for the rest of their lives. The issue is that these memberships were oversold, which exceeded the capacity of the hotel, an issue that park management was very well aware of. The next and more egregious scandal will be phrased oddly because of the YouTube algorithm, but it was revealed that Jim engaged in a non-consensual intimate relationship with a church secretary who he had drugged, paying her hundreds of thousands of dollars in PTL funds to buy her silence. Among this, the Bakers decided to step away from the PTL, appointing televangelist and icon of hate Jerry Falwell as the interim leader of the institution. In order to do so, Falwell began a fundraising campaign to acquire the now debt-ridden PTL, raising $20 million and promising to ride out the park's water slide known as the Typhoon.
Oh,
As a
that's why he was fucking in his suit riding.
Protest, as he decides to slide down fully clothed in a suit down into the pool below. However, after Falwell acquired the PTL, he betrayed Jim and began to work with other evangelical leaders, prodding further into Jim's crimes. In 1988, Jim was then indicted on 15 counts of wire fraud, 8 counts of mail fraud, and 1 count of conspiracy. He was then sentenced to 45 years in prison, though only served 5, and still makes prominent public appearances today. However, attendance for Heritage USA dropped as these scandals arose, and after Jim was indicted, the tax-exempt status of the park was revoked, eventually seeking bankruptcy as it was $72 million in debt.
Wow.
Since then, the park has gone through a number of owners which have all tried to revive it in one form or another. Today, though, the park has been redeveloped for mostly housing and commercial purposes, though a few remnants still exist. I think that a fundamentalist evangelical park is very much controversial on its own, or at least it would be today. But within the context of Jim's scandals and the betrayal by Jerry Falwell, I think its reputation as a saga of sin is well deserved. I can't say that the park itself was actually that interesting, as it had almost no rides and the activities weren't anything particularly unique that you couldn't find elsewhere. Still, no other Christian park has been so prolifically scandalous, and the story behind it is certainly worth knowing. I occasionally like to produce videos like this, taking a look at the more niche areas in the realm of theme parks. The video production is itself very much a learning opportunity, and this one has been no different. Hopefully, you've learned something about the history of Christianity with sacred mounts, working as precursors to themed entertainment, or have learned a bit more about other Christian attractions found throughout the world. I also thought that instead of focusing on just Christianity exclusively, the theme of this video would be a great way to explore other religions and philosophies, and seeing how they manifest as themed entertainment. I will admit, I was surprised by how often Asian conceptions of hell found themselves as main themes, and I'm also incredibly intrigued by how gimmicky Plain Park appears to be, even if I don't think that it will ever be built. I also love the low-budget haunted house atmosphere of Sui Teen's many attractions, in addition to the rest of the park, which puts it as a place I definitely want to visit if I manage to find the opportunity. Finally, after many requests, we were able to discover the history and controversy of Heritage USA, a park that was ironically taken down by the sins of its owners. Hopefully, the topic of the video was inherently interesting and at least educational. As I stated earlier, these more niche videos take a lot of time and effort to research, and so you can help it out by hitting the like button if you haven't yet done so. As always though, if you enjoy video essays like these that cover a number of different elements in the theme park industry, I strongly encourage you to subscribe and hit the bell icon so as to be alerted to new videos as they release.
Throughout the years, people have always had a sweet tooth, and candy companies have always tried to capitalize on that craving. There have been many different kinds on the market, and some have been around for a long time. However, there are some that people loved, and yet they have disappeared. In this video, we will take a closer look at some of those and remember the forgotten candies. Hershey's has become known for their range of creamy chocolate bars, which is why fans were surprised when they released Taste-tations. These creamy hard candies came in a variety of flavors like mint, raspberry, caramel, and butterscotch, but they didn't last long on the shelves.
Yeah, I remember those.
The Reggie Bar was named after a baseball player named Reggie Jackson, who played for the New York Yankees. This bar was a tasty combination of peanut butter and roasted peanuts encased in milk chocolate. However, the Reggie Bar was only on the market from 1978 to 1981.
Just missed it.
Wonka Donuts were candies sold by Nestle under the Willy Wonka Candy Company brand. These candies were little donut-shaped pieces of chocolate covered in sprinkles with a truffle-like inside. They were widely promoted ahead of the release of the 2005 Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, but were soon discontinued due to low sales.
Yeah, I never heard of
them.
them.
In the early 1980s, Mars had the Summit Bar. They were a chocolatey peanut wafer cookie bar. It's been reported that consumers loved the taste of these, but the chocolate really never stayed on them because they quickly melted.
Yeah.
This bar was discontinued in 1983. Remember Butterfinger BBs?
Yep.
These little chocolate balls were filled with crunchy Butterfinger and were first released in 1992. Nestle used The Simpsons to help market this new candy, and it became a huge success. Despite their popularity, they were discontinued in 2006. The Marathon bar was introduced by the Mars Company in 1983. They marketed the bar as a candy you can't eat quickly because the caramel was so chewy. The bright red packaging was extra long and it had a ruler marking listed on it so you would know exactly how much you were getting. Many people took the Marathon bar challenge, but they were discontinued in 1981. If you enjoyed these, then you may be happy to know that Cadbury has a version of this bar called the Curly Whirly. The original Hershey's Kisses were released back in 1907 and are still very popular today. But the Hershey Company wasn't satisfied with just plain Kisses.
What the fuck?
In 2005, they released the Hershey's
No way.
Kisses. These were miniature Hershey's Kisses that were coated with a colorful candy-coated shell.
You already have M&Ms. Leave it alone.
The same popularity, and they were discontinued 4 years later.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
Willy Wonka's Nerds were such a success that the company tried to keep the momentum going by producing dweebs in the early 1990s. These plump, soft, sweet treats were pretty much the same as Nerds, except they came in 3 flavor compartments rather than just 2. This difference wasn't enough to make them popular, and they were discontinued after a couple of years. In 2022, they made the return on the market in Europe. In 2003, the Hershey Company introduced the Hershey S'mores Candy Bar. It was based on the s'mores treats that people love to make around campfires. This may have seemed like a great idea, but apparently most people loved making them and not buying them.
Yeah.
In 2012, they were discontinued. In 2007, Hershey released the Elvis Peanut Butter and Banana Cream Reese's Cups to honor the king of rock and roll. One of Elvis's favorite sandwiches had peanut butter and banana, but he may have been the only person who would have loved this candy. They were discontinued the next year in 2008.
Thank God.
If you're a fan of Almond Joy or Mounds, then you would have loved a Coconut Grove bar made by the Curtis Candy Company. This tasty candy bar had a creamy coconut center that was covered in dark chocolate.
Nope.
It was invented
I like the
somewhere
Almond
around
Joy because it had the almond in
It was
it.
on the market for less than 10 years. Peter Paul's Powerhouse Bar was another option on the market if you enjoyed candy like Snickers. It contained peanuts, fudge, and caramel and was sure to give you that extra quick power that you needed. Production began in the late 1960s, and this bar disappeared when Peter Paul was purchased by Hershey in the late 1980s. Hershey's Bar None consisted of 2 wafers filled with chocolate cream that was covered in milk chocolate and crushed peanuts. These bars used to be really popular until they decided to add caramel, which seemed to make the sales drop. Hershey's Bar None was discontinued in 1997, but there is a version of it that is still made by Iconic Candy. PB Max launched around 1990
those were
Mars
really good.
Candy Company. They were essentially a square-shaped whole grain cookie topped with peanut butter and covered in milk chocolate. In total, they made around $50 million in sales, but sadly they were discontinued just 4 years after their release. Nestle Alpine White was a candy bar that consisted of creamy white chocolate and almonds. This delicious combination came out in the mid-1980s, but has since been discontinued. Perhaps one day this bar may make a comeback. The 7-Up candy bar was a 1930s candy made by the Pearson Candy Company. It was a chocolate bar that had 7 unique chambers of different fillings. Some of those changed over the years, but they usually had caramel, butterscotch, fudge, Brazil nut, cherry cream, coconut, and orange jelly. It was sold for quite a while, but it was discontinued forever in 1979. There really hasn't been anything like it ever since.
Yeah. Keep it that way.
Swoops were first released in 2003. They were chocolate discs which sort of stuck to the roof of your mouth and then melted. They even had one with peanut butter swirls on it.
Okay.
The time on the market was short, and they were discontinued 3 years later. Bonkers Candy came in a range of both fruity and chocolate flavors. Their commercials were pretty crazy, but they soon became popular with kids and adults. If you were around in the 80s, then you definitely remember going bonkers over this candy. They have been discontinued, but there are constant rumors of their return. The winner of the all-time weirdest candy bar name has to be the Chicken Dinner. No, this one didn't contain any chicken, but it came out in 1924 and lasted on the market until 1962. It was actually a chocolate-filled bar with nuts. The odd name and advertising made it extremely popular with children. One might think that this bar was nutritious, but that can certainly be debated. It was really just meant to compete with bars like Milky Way. Space dust candy was invented in the 1950s by a chemist who worked for General Foods. He made it by accident while working on an instant soft drink. The candy was a fine dust, and it was actually released in 1978. It was discontinued just 5 years later. This is essentially the exact same thing as Pop Rocks, which I'm sure that many people have had. Jumbo Nerds was another candy from Willy Wonka. They were trying to capitalize on the popularity of Nerds, which are neon-colored candies in the shape of pebbles. Jumbo Nerds were the exact same as the original, but they came in a larger version. Unfortunately, these were not as popular, and they have been discontinued.
Yeah, I can see. Yeah.
Wonka bars were created by Quaker Oats in conjunction with the producers of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory in 1971. Imagine how excited kids were when they learned that there was a real-life chocolate bar that they could purchase. These bars continued to be sold until 2010 when they were discontinued due to poor sales in the U.S. Rally was a candy bar that was introduced by the Hershey Company sometime in the 1970s. It was a chocolate-covered bar with a nougat center that was coated in caramel and rolled in peanuts. This candy bar has been discontinued and then brought back on numerous occasions. The milkshake candy bar was created during the 1920s. It got its name from the ingredients which gave it a similar taste to the chocolate malt milkshake. They were incredibly popular for decades, but they were discontinued in the 1980s due to a business acquisition. The fictional computer-generated TV host Max Headroom became so popular in the 1980s that Topps decided to get in on the action. In time, his popularity declined and the candy was discontinued. However, it may live on in your dental fillings because it was pure sweetness. Taking out the trash was never a sweet chore, but this candy sure was. It came in different colored trash can containers and was manufactured by Topps beginning in the 1970s. This wacky candy remained popular until the 1990s when it was discontinued due to company cutbacks. Bubble beepers were first introduced in 1992. It was a toy beeper filled with gum, and they became extremely popular with 90s kids. However, the popularity of the real devices declined, which consequently led to the candy's demise.
Obsolete candy
in the
for an
1990s,
obsolete
the musical group
piece of
Spice Girls
technology.
became super huge. They even had their own lollipop, which kids, and especially little girls, wanted. The sucker itself may not have been the best, but it was the packaging that was super cool, and even better, it had different stickers inside for kids to collect. Eventually, the lollipop was discontinued. No matter what, candy companies will constantly be evolving in order to create that next sensation. We all have a sweet tooth, and they're hoping to make some money off of it. I hope you enjoyed this sweet walk down Candy Lane as we remember some of the forgotten candies. What was your favorite candy? Let us know in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching.
All right. I don't think I have to get up and do anything tomorrow besides go to work. I feel like this is one of those nights where you're just like looking for interesting stuff to watch on YouTube. You know what I'm saying? This is weird. No, I don't want to watch anything with food in it. No, thank you. While I do that, I'm gonna might as well do a dab here. But while I look for something else for us to look at. All the good stuff that I see is like half an hour, 40 minutes long, and I don't know if I have that much energy. It's pretty late. Fallout? Okay. Alright, here's one that's pretty quick. And it's by TKS Mantis. Yeah. And it's about Fallout. So let's do that one. Yes, and I'll just port this one over here.
Have you ever been playing Fallout New Vegas and wondered what it would be like if it were multiplayer? Adding up to 50 players worldwide to the Mojave as you try to eke out your existence in a familiar but now foreign environment? Well, that is what New Vegas Multiplayer, or NVMP, aims to bring to life. While it can definitely be a little janky, what is offered is a worthwhile experience for any fan of Fallout New Vegas. However, getting started with such a project can be confusing if you have never played this kind of mod before. And once you are plopped into Good Springs, you might want some pointers before starting your journey.
Yeah, I'm already subbed to TKS Mantis. Like, I've been a fan of his stuff for quite a while.
I covered New Vegas Multiplayer last year, and since then, I have seen the game get various updates. Just recently, I decided to go back to the Mojave and see how the mod was holding up. So one of the first places we are going to start is how to get this running for yourself.
Not sure that I care to play a New Vegas in multiplayer.
The way the server is set up for the mod is tied into the Discord server itself. So usernames log into NVMP and the Discord authorizes it. This means that you must also join the NVMP Discord server. Both the download link and a Discord invite can be found at nv-mp.com, and I will post links to both in the description as well as a pinned comment. Once that is out of the way and you have joined the Discord, you will want to clear all mods from your Steam version of Fallout New Vegas and make sure that it's installed on your main C drive. This was easy for me because I usually store games on an external SSD. All I had to do was uninstall New Vegas after removing all mods and reinstall it on my C drive through Steam. It's important to note that some mods can be used and even a couple are recommended, but this fresh install ensures we don't have any conflicts. Also, some players run New Vegas from an external drive, but to be safe, these are the recommended settings. Running NVMP also requires the 4GB patch from Nexus Mods. Following the instructions on the page will lead to an easy patcher for your game. From this point, you can run NVMP and enjoy the Mojave, but if you want some extra protection against crashes, something I highly recommend, then you would be wise to install the New Vegas script extender and New Vegas Anti-Crash mod. The script extender should be version 6.2.4, which is not the newest release. Again, links to every mod and download I refer to in the video will be featured in the description and a pinned comment. Both NVSE and NVAC are easy to install into your game by simply following the easy-to-read instructions that come with each mod. The most you will have to do is drag a file to a folder in your game directory. NVMP is designed to be played with others. That doesn't mean you can't come in and have a fun experience alone, but you will miss a large amount of the appeal if you refuse to engage entirely. Say hello on Discord and look into the many player factions that roam the Mojave. Odds are, most groups are looking to recruit, and for the most part, the people in the community tend to help new players get started. The Discord is a great place to meet people and see what's happening in-game before you bust out into the desert for yourself. You can learn a lot from chatting with people who know the game a little bit better. Factions can help you get familiar with how dedicated players approach the game. Forming up with a group that you like or find out in the wasteland can open doors for you that would remain closed for a solo player. Again, being social isn't a requirement, and there's a lot of fun to be had for lone wanderers. Still, you wouldn't be trying to play an online version of Fallout New Vegas if you wanted no human interaction.
Just is there enough space for...
Something every player of Fallout New Vegas knows about is fast travel, and this is a factor in NVMP. Players are free to fast travel to anywhere on the map they have discovered previously, but there are two chat commands that every hardened Mojave warrior knows, and you should use them frequently. The first is /GS. Entering this command in chat will teleport you to Good Springs, the only safe zone in the Mojave with PvP disabled. This works if you are inside, in battle, or just lost in the void. No matter where you are in the wasteland, you can use this command and go to Good Springs. The second is for healing purposes. Using the command /HH2 will take you to the second floor of H&H Tools. Inside the rooms here are auto docks that can be used free of charge. This is handy when you want to heal after a long adventure. There are other chat commands you will learn while playing, different teleport prompts, emotes, and chatting itself. Just typing and hitting enter will allow you to speak locally. Using // in the chat will send the message to the whole server, and using the /me will send your text as a roleplay action in the discussion window.
Hardcore mode must be brutal.
NVMP is restricted to hardcore mode only. This means that stim packs take time to heal us, food and beverage take time to engage their effects, and we must worry about sleeping, eating, and drinking to stay 100%. Or do we? While this mode's effect on chems like stim packs is constant, going into the game's settings menu and clicking off hardcore mode can reset your status for hydration, sleep, and nourishment. So it will be up to you. Do you roleplay the harsh Mojave wasteland and its perils, or do you click that off when you are thirsty so you don't have to worry about it? The choice is yours. This tactic, as well as the teleporting, is something that the majority of players on the server do. So I feel like it could be important info for those that are just starting and want the same advantages as the regular player base. Once you get moving in the Mojave, one of the questions you might have is, where do I store my stuff safely? You may not want to sell everything you find, and you can only carry so much before you become over-encumbered. There is good news. Right in Goodsprings, by the general store, we can find 2 dumpsters, and the one on the left is for sure not synced to the server. This means that we can store whatever we want in this dumpster, and it will only be visible by your character. This is handy for unique items that you may have found from my previous videos about Fallout New Vegas, or just nice armor and weapons that you want to hold on to. There is a housing system in NVMP, but that is some pretty advanced gameplay that new players won't naturally be getting into during their first few days of Wasteland living. When playing NVMP, you may notice notifications in the chat about sparks with a little lightning bolt next to them. This is a more stable currency than caps, as those can be easily duped. You can earn 150 sparks daily by taking out NPCs, and you gain them passively as you play the game more. There is a banking system, and you can deposit the sparks into your bank, which is recommended as if you were killed in a PvP battle, you will lose the sparks in your wallet to whoever got the jump on you. Sparks can be traded and gifted to players, and some use them to pay others for bounties and missions that may need to be done. These sparks are primarily used to buy player homes and upkeep for factions. However, players run stores that use sparks, and some items can be purchased from the bank using this currency.
It does sound
New
interesting.
Vegas multiplayer can be a lot
give
of
it
fun
that.
for people looking to switch it up in their Fallout New Vegas playthrough. The server features mods that bring back some cut content and hidden things to find that are exclusive to the server. The community, for the most part, have been welcoming to me, and it's refreshing to join an online game and not want to leave after 5 minutes due to the behavior of the regulars. NVMP has the vibe of a Fallout game being thrust into an online arena, but the people who play it are more inviting than you might assume. I look forward to my journey in the Mojave and hope to see you out there as well. Hopefully this video helped to give you some inside knowledge that you can use well in the wasteland. You never know what you might run into.
That is a big dab. I don't know if that you can see that for scale, but that's a big dab. It's a big one.
In 1998, Bruce Willis saved the world from an asteroid. Harrison Ford was voted the hottest man alive, but I could do this. And
How
Bill
long is
Clinton
this?
shagged Monica Lewinsky.
I did not have
Oh,
no.
It's no. I don't even really care about Fallout 2 or outright. I mean, I do. But I'm not interested in an hour-long documentary on Fallout 2. I've seen too many of them. Okay.
No matter how old you are, there's a pretty good chance that you've been to a shopping mall if you have lived in the US or Canada. At one time, they were a great place to shop, eat, and just hang out with friends and family. In the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, they really were our social network, only better since it was face-to-face. Throughout the years, there have been many stores that have come and gone. In today's video, we will have a look back and remember some of the stores that used to grace the shopping malls. Tom McAn was a chain of shoe stores that had over 1,400 stores at its peak in the 1960s. They could be seen in many malls across the United States, and they were one of the oldest and best
last video of the
shoe
night, ladies and
retailers.
gentlemen.
In 1996, the chain shut
I'll
down
see you
all
again
of its stores.
tomorrow night.
The shoes are still available if you're lucky enough to have a Sears or Kmart nearby.
Yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow night.
Kinney Shoes was another shoe manufacturer and retailer that became quite prominent in malls. They began in
I will tomorrow night will be dedicated to Atomic Heart and some weird history at the end. So that's what we'll be doing tomorrow night. Tonight I wasn't in the mood to game. But I definitely wanted to hang out with whoever might wander in. So, yeah, back to the show.
In New York in 1894, and at its peak, they had 467 stores, which were all shut down in 1998. However, you may recognize one of the retail shoe divisions named Foot Locker, which began in 1974 and is still going. The Warner Brothers Studio Store was similar in style to the Disney Store. In fact, they were each other's biggest competition. They
actually might have to work open to close on Saturday. That's gonna be a rough fucking day. That's gonna be real fucking rough.
They first opened in 1991, and they sold Looney Tunes merchandise, as well as DC Comics and any other merchandise based on Warner Brothers films.
My bad.
All of the stores closed by December 31st, 2001. Gadzooks was a mall-based teenage clothing retailer. They were known for their crazy t-shirts and a Volkswagen Beetle car that was cut in half.
Yep.
The first store opened in Mesquite, Texas in 1983. From there, they grew to more than 400 stores. In March of 2005, Forever 21 purchased the chain and closed out all of the Gadzooks stores. KB Toys was an American toy store chain that began in 1922 as a candy store called Kaufman Brothers. In 1946, they acquired a wholesale toy company from a candy client who owed them money. In 1948, they ended their candy business to focus on toys. In 1973, they ended their toy wholesaling to start a shopping mall-based toy retailer. The company eventually grew and operated over 1,300 stores across all 50 states. After some financial trouble and poor sales, the company filed for bankruptcy in 2008. By 2009, all of the locations were permanently closed. The Sharper Image was founded in 1977 and was a catalog business that sold jogging watches. Later on, they expanded their catalog selection to an assortment of futuristic gadgets, electronics,
overpriced,
and air purifiers.
Overpriced.
They eventually expanded into 187 retail stores across 38 states. In 2008, they declared bankruptcy and closed all of their stores. The company still sells merchandise through their website, catalog, and third-party retailers. However, that's not quite the same as going into the store and checking out all the gadgets in person. The Limited launched a children's store in 1987 called Limited 2. They sold apparel and accessories for girls between the ages of 5 and 15. At its peak, there were over 600 stores in operation. In the later 2000s, their success began dwindling. Between 2008 and 2010, the Limited 2 stores were rebranded as Justice. Since that time, the Limited 2 trademark has been revived into an online store and sold on Amazon. Sam Goody music stores began in the 1940s with Sam Goody opening a record store in New York City. The chain as we know it was founded in 1951. They specialized in records, cassette tapes, CDs, VHS tapes, DVDs, video games, posters, comics, and more. Eventually, technology would catch up to them and leave them struggling. By 2012, most of the stores were either shuttered or converted into other brands like FYE. However, there are 2 Sam Goody stores that are left in the U.S. One is in Ohio, and the other one is in Oregon. B. Dalton Books was an American bookstore chain that was founded in 1966. They became one of the largest retailers of hardcover books with over 798 stores at its peak. The stores were primarily in shopping malls, and they competed with Walden Books. Barnes & Noble acquired the chain in 1987, and they continued the stores until 2010 when they were all shuttered. Walden Books was founded in 1933 in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Within 15 years, they grew to 250 locations. Kmart eventually acquired the bookstore, and their success continued. In 1994, they combined Walden Books, Brentano's, and Borders to form Borders Walden Group. At that time, Walden Books had 1,216 stores in 50 states. In 1995, the renamed Borders Group was able to buy back its stock and become independent. Beginning in 2004, many Walden Books locations were rebranded as Borders Express stores. In 2011, the Borders Group filed for liquidation to close all of the remaining Walden Books and Borders stores. Wet Seal was once a trendy clothing retailer for young women. The store was founded as Lauren's in 1962 and renamed Wet Seal in 1990. By 2014, there were 478 stores across the U.S. and sales were sluggish. They filed for bankruptcy in 2015 after closing most of their stores. In 2017, they closed the remaining locations. It now operates as an online retailer. Merry-Go-Round was a women's clothing chain that operated from the 1970s to the 1990s. At their peak, they operated almost 1,000 stores. They specialized at capitalizing on the latest fashion trends for women ages 15 to 35. In 1993, they purchased a men's clothing store, Chess King. Things were not going as well as they appeared, and Merry-Go-Round filed for bankruptcy just 1 year later in 1994. In 1996, they closed all of their more than 500 locations, which were primarily in malls. Deb Shops was a women's clothing store that dominated the malls with their market share of teenagers and 20-somethings. They were known for their excellent customer service and frequent updates to stay up with the latest fashion trends. In 1995, they even bought out Atlantic bookstores, and they operated them in several northeastern states. The company was also great at using their own capital to open new stores. This business plan continued to work for them until the 2000s. Their parent company, Lee Equity Partners, filed for bankruptcy in 2011 and again in 2014. In 2015, they closed out all of their stores and became an online retailer selling plus-size clothing until their website shut down without warning in December of 2018. Since that time, the name was acquired by a new company who has reopened the website for plus sizes and has added a hyphen in the middle of the name. Chess King was a men's clothing retailer that began in 1968 and grew to over 500 stores by the mid-80s. They were known for selling men's parachute pants, shoes, bomber jackets, and other trendy accessories. Chess King remained popular with fads and fashion throughout the crazy 80s.
I don't remember.
The company was bought out by Merry-Go-Round in 1993, just before they filed bankruptcy and shut down their doors in November of 1995. Wilson's Leather is based in Minneapolis, and at their peak in 2002, they had 763 stores throughout the U.S. and Canada. In 2003 and 2004, the company scaled down its
Keep wanting to sit
operations
back.
and closed dozens of non-performing stores.
I need a better
In
chair.
2008, they announced that they would liquidate all of their mall stores. Somehow, there were still some out there, and in 2020, they announced that they would close 110 stores managed by Wilson's Leather. As of today, I have no idea if there are any Wilson's Leather stores that are still left in operation. However, I do know that they have an online store that they run. A spree began in San Francisco, California in
I remember them.
1968. They became a retailer that specialized in women's clothing and accessories, but they also had
I don't know
men's
if,
and kids. One of the things that they became best known for was the Esprit
That's what I keep
sportswear,
doing
which
with
was a
it,
huge
with this-
hit
with
with
that
teens
space bar.
in the 19...
Remember Fashion Bug? Yeah, I remember that my grandmother and my aunt used to go shopping there all the fucking time, and I just go next door to the fucking to the Blockbuster, if I could, while they were in there, because fuck if I'm gonna stay in there with fucking women's clothing shopping. No. Go next door.
1980s. In February of 2012, they announced plans of closing all retail stores in North America because they were no longer competitive in the market. However, in 2015, they reopened a few stores in Canada. They have continued to operate stores around the world, most notably in Asia. Not only that, but they also have an online store. 579 was a retail chain that offered mid to low price fashions for young teens and
Don't
young
think I
women
remember that
between
one.
13 and 22 years of age. This is one store that was very prominent in many malls. In 1999, they had gone bankrupt and the stores were all liquidated. Fashion Bug was a
There we go.
plus-size women clothing retailer that once had more than 1,000 stores. Their parent company, Charming Shops, which owned other plus-size retailers such as Lane Bryant, closed the Fashion Bug brand in early 2013. The men's clothing store chain Structure was originally part of Express under the Limited brand and spun off as its own store in 1989. In 2001, it was reintegrated as Express Men, and the Structure brand was sold to Sears in 2003 for less than $10 million in an effort to attract younger shoppers. Casual Corner was a clothing chain that began
remember
in
Casual Corner.
1950. Their original focus was on women's sportswear. The company was sold to the U.S. Shoe Corporation in 1970 with just 20 stores and soon expanded into shopping malls across the country. By the 1990s, they had changed from women's sportswear to women's working attire. Under the U.S. Shoe's ownership, Casual Corner became the foundation for a larger company known as Women's Specialty Retailing Group. In addition to Casual Corner, they owned and operated August Max, Petite Sophisticates, Sophisticated Woman, and a few other lesser-known brands. At its peak in 2000, Casual Corner operated more than 525 stores. By 2005, there was increased competition, and all remaining locations were closed after being sold to a liquidator. Throughout the years, shopping malls have declined in popularity. There are several reasons as to why this has happened, but two of the main ones are increased cost of rental space and competition with online sales. Many of the malls we once knew are now sitting empty or have several retail spaces that are not occupied. The landscape of shopping online may have changed things, but there are still many people who will never forget their special memories that were made inside of a mall. Do you have any special memories that you would like to share? Let us know in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching.
Alrighty, well, let's put this back on while I war with myself whether I want to do a little bit of video gaming or not. It's just anything that all my games, all the games I have require me to actually fucking engage. Anyway, you know, guys, I think that's enough for one night. I have XO1 and I have Atomic Heart to get back into. Just don't have the energy tonight. I'd rather turn in early. Well, to me, it's 3 a.m. Yeah, I'd rather turn in now and get up with the possibility of doing some gaming in the morning before I have to leave for work. I have to be at work till 3, so if I get up at a reasonable hour, between like 11 and 12, I can get on and do some gaming real quick. That's right, I have the Outer Worlds. All I would really need to get, but what if I want to just buy the expansions for the Outer Worlds? Can I just do that? Expansion pass. What's the expansion pass? That's 22. That's really nice. People tell me that I've already played the original game. People tell me that the expansions are really good. Read more. Yeah, Parallel Gorgon. Investigate the dark seal. Okay. Murder on Eridanos. I heard that one's really good too. You know what? I might pick that up tomorrow on the way to work. At least tomorrow when I get home, I'll pick that up. I could probably buy it on my phone through Steam. No, I'll just wait until I get home to do it. I think I still have some money in. No, that's in there for my Game Pass. Make sure I always have money for that. So, yeah. Tomorrow, yep. I gotta put some money on my account anyway. So I'll buy the expansion, the Outer Worlds expansion pass. And once I'm done with Atomic Heart, we will get into the Outer Worlds expansion packs. I've got quite a few games, but sometimes I'm just in I'm in a mood to play a certain type of game, or I'm not in the mood to play the games that I have right now. play some games for you guys, but I don't feel like doing it tonight. So I think we'll call it a day here. Thank you very much for being here with me tonight. I hope you have a good rest of the week. We're fast slamming into the end of it. Tomorrow is Thursday, and then the weekend will be upon us. And we'll be back to a full streaming weekend. That's when I do most of my streaming. I try to stay in the algorithm with my content, to stay relevant and whatnot. But during the week, it's a little bit, at least that transition between Thursday and Saturday night gets a little bit dicey. So this is pretty much, I might have one more opportunity tomorrow. Yeah, because we're going to check out Outer Worlds expansion pass. I got to reinstall that game. And then I won't see you again realistically until Sunday night or Monday. More than likely Sunday night. Yeah, because I'll get home and I'll just want to crash Friday night, and Saturday night I'm gonna be. You might not see me until Sunday. Sunday is probably a good day. Sunday evening, yeah, maybe mid-afternoon. I don't know. Whatever. That being said, have a great rest of your week. Stay happy, stay healthy, but most importantly, stay happy. Self-care is very important. No one else is going to look. I mean, I wouldn't say nobody's going to look after you, but you're the only one that knows how you feel and what you need at a particular time. So make sure you look after yourself. Don't be selfish. Don't be greedy. But don't ignore yourself at the cost of everything else. I love you guys. Be safe. I've been Josh with American Gnome Productions. And I will see you in the next one. Have a good one.